please.
Mike Davenport,
Here.
Chris Espinoza,
Here.
Sherelle Fuller,
Here.
Jenny Hagstrom,
Here.
Troy Pavicic,
Here.
Joanna Vasquez Drexel,
Here.
Nancy Kupka,
Here.
Luca Plauskas,
Here.
and Caitlin Vincent.
Here.
We have a quorum. Let's stand for the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. And we start with our favorite.
Yeah, our students. All right, I'll invite Courtney up.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you all for having our students this evening. I am really happy to introduce to you three of our student leaders from our North Stars program, and they run our freshman orientation program, and that's what they're going to talk about tonight. So we have tonight Topher Ferris, Michael Logan, and Allison Mulvey, along with our sponsors Kevin Leslie and Lisa Lichman. Erin Moore is also one of our sponsors, but she couldn't make it tonight, so these two have graciously joined us this evening. So I'm going to call our students up, and they're going to talk to you about our freshman orientation program. So come on up.
Hello, everybody. I'm Topher Ferris, and we're just here to talk to you guys about what North Stars Positively North is all about. So just for some statistics, there's 110 of us, so pretty big number of leaders, and let's get into it. So our mission, as leaders, we provide a foundation for new DGN students, and the ways we do this is we help them become familiar with the building. We show them to their lockers, and that's just a huge part of making them feel safe and comfortable heading to that next point. And so showing them around and really showing our philosophies to them really makes them feel safe and comfortable. And along with that, we encourage them to meet new people. North is filled with tons of resources and great people to help you fulfill what you need to accomplish at North. So, yeah.
Okay, so my name's Allison Mulvey, and on orientation day, we had about 430 freshmen, and I believe it was about 25 upperclassmen transfer students. So a lot of people came, and it was a great turnout. It was really nice, when they're introduced, they're walking into the school, and the band's playing, the drum line's playing, they're really kind of understanding, like, what North and the excitement and energy that they're going to be getting when they, are at football games, when you'll see the band or at the homecoming parade and like the homecoming rally, everything like that. So we get everyone together and they find name tags, as you can kind of see in some of the pictures. Topher's actually finding some name tags right there in his little construction uniform. And so, everyone knows their group. You get a group number. Everyone, the leaders like to dress up. Topher, I'm really calling you out, but Topher was construction. Some friends and I were Guy Fieri, and Michael, you're also construction as well. So, everyone has their own little theme. Some people dressed up as pigs. You'll see that on the next slide. Yeah. But it's really great. And, everyone, we start talking out. Dr. Dement was introducing herself and kind of the school. We learned some cheers from the cheerleaders, and it was a really great time. And then,
Next slide.
yes, please. So there's the pigs, as you can see. So everyone kind of was grouped together. There's the numbers on the wall. You can see where you're going, and you can, right off the bat, you can finally meet some, new friends. I know there's, people in my freshman orientation group that I'm still friends with today. It was just kind of nice to, before the actual first day of school, get to see a few faces, maybe compare schedules and see, oh, we both have math together. Oh, you just see them in the hallway, and you're like, oh, yeah, that's Kate from my freshman orientation group. That's someone I already know. You see at lunch, that's kind of a scary time. You don't know who you're going to sit with, especially if you're a transfer student. Maybe you lost some friends just through summer and you need some new friends. You see, oh, she was nice in orientation. She said that her favorite color was blue, so was mine, and she has 6 dogs. I love dogs. I'll go sit down and talk. So it's really nice, a good community right off the bat. One more slide, please. And so there's the cheerleaders, and then so I want to really break down the gauntlet line. So that is intense, let me tell you. You can see in the pictures students walk through. That's after, they they see the drum line and the band, they're thinking, all right, we're just going to go find a spot. No way. They are not done. They are going to be fished through this line, getting like praised and cheered for, and the cheerleaders are cheering, the Athenas are there, the football team is there. It gets a little crazy by the end. That's where the football team is. But it's also just a more like, wow, okay, like this is kind of exciting. It's a little intimidating. You see all these people and you see, oh, they're all cheering for me. Like that's kind of nice as I'm walking in, you know, all these people are here for me and here to make this first kind of day of school experience at North a good one. So, oh yes, and the Athena's cheer and drum line. I still have that one, right? Or do you want to talk about that? I got it. Okay. So I was saying a little bit before, but the Athenas, they were there. They're in the gauntlet line right at the beginning, and they did a performance, JV and varsity. So kind of maybe you didn't know when tryouts were because Athena's tryouts are before the school starts. They're in like the winter kind of springtime. So some people in 8th grade might not have known. They see Athena's, they think, oh, I like to dance. I can try out next year. So it's kind of nice to see and know, get a little glimpse at what you're going to be seeing at the football games. And same thing with cheer. You see someone just getting hoisted up right there. I mean, you're thinking, wow, okay, that's pretty intense. And she like flips down and everything. It's incredible. How exciting. Maybe I want to try that next year. And then, of course, the lovely drum line. I mean, you got to love them. You cannot go wrong with some live music. And, I mean, our drum line is incredible, as you guys must know, because we know what's up. We know what's up with the drum line.
Absolutely.
And football is getting everyone hype, getting everyone going crazy, and it just really brings the energy. It's really exciting. It's something that I enjoy as a leader, and I know I enjoyed as a freshman coming in, so.
Hi everyone, my name is Michael Logan. So these are like pictures of our small group meetings. So after like everybody went into the gym, we had these like small group meetings. It was like 10 to 15 kids, and we just did like simple like get to know you activities. And then we did human knot, which me and Topher's group could not. So, you know, it's just like kind of like getting to know like a few people in your grade. So like my freshman orientation, I came from St. Mary's, which is like a small school. So like, I think maybe 15 kids went to North from my school. So I went in knowing like really small amount of kids. So like a small group activity, getting to know people's names was, you know, like really, it was really good for me. And it's just like a group of kids that you can like be friends with. It's like your first friends. And like Allison was saying earlier, like you kind of talk to these kids and you're like, oh, we have this class together. So like I'm a PE leader and like 2 of the kids in my group are in my PE class. So it's like kind of interesting how like they like know people going into the school year. So it's not like super nerve-wracking. And then locker practicing and finding classrooms. So, you know, lockers can be a pain in the butt sometimes. Like I remember with the renovations my freshman year, I had a different locker. So the first day of my junior year, I went to my locker and I spent like 10 minutes trying to open it. And I found out that I was at the wrong locker. So that's probably why it didn't open. So I wanted to make sure that like kids knew like where their locker was, how to open it. Like again, coming from St. Mary's, no lockers. So like I did not know how to open up a locker my freshman year, so my leaders helped me with that. And then also finding classrooms, like the classroom numbers are, I'd say, mostly in order. And there's like this like area that's like kind of like a square, and they can get a little out of order. So just kind of helping the freshmen find their classrooms, I think, was really good for them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then continued support. So we had on the first day of school small group meetings where we kind of met with the same group, did some more get to know you activities, and then just kind of let the freshmen ask us any questions about like clubs or classes, like how's this teacher, and then we also helped them find their classrooms. So we kind of sat like in the, we sat in like a business like area of the school, and we just let freshmen come to us if they had questions. And then on the student panel, so this hasn't happened yet, this is happening next week, I believe. So during your resource period on the block day, or the freshman resource period on the block day, they're going to come to the auditorium. There's going to be a few North Star leaders that are on a panel, and they can ask any questions about homecoming week or homecoming itself. So like, we brainstormed a couple questions, but like some of them are like, with Spirit Week, like, do people actually dress up? Because like, that can be, like, that's a serious thought. Like, you're like, I remember last year, first Spirit Week, we did anything but a backpack day, and I brought a cooler, and I was like, what if no one else, like, what if everyone else didn't have a backpack? So just let them, like, ask questions, like, anything that they have. Like, we can encourage them to go to the dance, because it's a lot of fun.
All right, thank you. Any questions from board members?
No, I think it's really a great thing that you help the freshmen and the transfer students, because coming to a new school is hard enough, and then not being acquainted with anybody in the school can really be intimidating. So thank you guys for taking the time to help those kids, because it makes their 4 years or 3 years or 2 years much better. Yeah, thank you.
Those first impressions are really important, and these guys do such a great job, and they make fun of themselves, but they're dressing like pigs. That actually provides a really positive impression for our newcomers and our new students, because it is a perfect example of how on homecoming we have all of these kids participating, and it's building our culture to show what we're all about, and they do such a great job of that and creating that positive first impression for all of our new students. So it's really impressive, and it's a lot of fun. So and evidenced by the number of kids who show up for freshman orientation and then continue to participate and be involved, and really that's what our whole first couple of weeks have been, is getting kids involved. We just had our student activities fair, and a lot of ways for kids to get involved. Some of you were at the homecoming game, or the first football game last week, and saw the great crowd that we had, and that's just, again, builds part of our school culture that's really important to our students. So
Yeah.
thank you guys.
Thank you,
so
thank you,
much.
thank you, thank you.
And a nice presentation, too, by the way.
Yes, thank you, thank you.
Thank you. All right, we'll turn it over to our student board members. I know that they drew straws to see who went first, so I don't know who won or lost.
Define one.
Yeah, just define when.
Leave that up to them to determine.
I can go first. Okay. So starting off with last Friday, we had our first home game, like Ms. Dement had mentioned earlier. Our stands were full of students who were supporting our football team, and both sides were able to come together and enjoy the game. That definitely didn't disappoint in the end. And with the DGN students flashing the entire side of the theme, which was purple out, and we were supporting our cheerleaders with the FNL shirts that most of our students had bought, which is really great to see people engaging and then also figuring out how to use their resources to get those shirts. Following the football game on Saturday, we celebrated our Downers Grove community by having our first block party that incorporated many games, food choices, and lively music, and that made the environment as fun as possible, and it got individuals to come together no matter the age group. And then for a homecoming report as to what's going on this week and next week, we have already started getting our themes from homecoming and starting off with class colors next Monday, which creates an establishment of every grade having a specified class color and then wearing them, and it just brings everyone together, starting it off strong. And then throughout the school, we have gotten pure excitement from what is to come. We've seen that people are enjoying what they're seeing so far. And everyone is informed last week that we were able to start selecting our homecoming court of 15 individuals. And later this week, we're going to find out our 5 royalty individuals for homecoming court. And then inside look for the academic aspect of Downers Grove North. We have incorporated time during free periods to help students with specific areas that they might need help with. And recently we have had teachers teach lessons such as how to apply for college and how to become successful during our stressful times right now. And so far students have been responding well and are engaging in the activities presented by the staff.
Good, thank you.
Thank you, thank you.
At Downers Grove South,
a lot of the students and staff are finally settling into the new block schedule. It seems like the students are finally figuring out where they need to be, when they need to be, and I would say the block schedule is like easing into a routine around this time. Miss Lip has taken the initiative to come to different classes. She was just in my English class today taking feedback from the students directly, asking them what they liked about the block schedule and what changes can be made long term and just like following them in the next few weeks. So having our principal really like open up to us and ask direct feedback was really nice and felt very personal for the students. Some of the pros that I heard during my time listening were having more self-choice of like when we get to leave during the block schedule during our lunches at the end of the day, especially for upperclassmen. That's been really nice, getting able to leave school early so that we can get to our jobs or just have more time to do homework throughout the week and feel less cramped and stressed. The teachers have been really engaging with the longer class periods, especially in my anatomy class, for example. We've been able to really like use the microscopes and the equipment since we have the longer time, which has been really helpful in learning. Some of the cons that I've heard are more with awkward schedules, having long spaces of time in the middle of the day just sitting in the commons due to having 8th period off, for example, or even study halls. So some today when we were getting feedback, we're recommending like an open campus or some changes to be made with 8th period laying in the middle of the day on block schedules. And for access, the seniors are more excited to have the student choice days and the ability to go wherever we want. But the freshmen do enjoy like getting to know a certain group of students that will be with them all 4 years. I know my younger brother who's a freshman, he really enjoyed having that new group of people that he might not have classes with already, so he can meet and get to know those people. This week is our homecoming week, so the spirit is high at DGS. We started the day off with a comfy dress day, so it's always nice to have a Monday pajama day with different dress-up days following the next few weeks. We have Powder Puff coming up on Wednesday, which I'm really excited for, as well as a mind reader coming to our resource, which will be really fun and interesting. And I know our homecoming court just got released today, so everyone's really excited and looking forward to the dance.
Very good. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. We'll hear more from Luca and Caitlin later today as we dive a little deeper into our schedule. But we're going to start with the reports for tonight. And I'm going to turn it over here in a moment to Ryan and Lisa. A feature moving forward in our meetings will be as we open up reports from the superintendent, we will tie it back to how it directly connects to the strategic plan so that the board is aware of how we're working to meet these goals and specifically the tasks that we're working on. As tonight is our first really official night of the school year, first board meeting of the school year, you will see some of these are extensive, because it's the first time that we've connected that strategic plan, those strategic plan items with that topic. In future meetings, if we revisit the same topic again, we won't go into as much depth as it comes up, just like what new are we touching on related to that in that meeting. So there's an overview for that today. As we go through that, if a board member would like for us to connect any of these in some way to what we're doing, please ask. We might call out a couple of things as a team as well as we go through those. But really, this is us documenting that we're working diligently towards meeting the goals of the strategic plan. So the first one tonight, talking about summer school and the extended school year report. Really, this ties into the strategic direction of an equitable and supportive environment. And you can see there the key expectation it ties to is that ensuring safe, sustainable opportunities for all students and families, including access to district resources. There's two key tasks that are met through this. The first one is really about the instructional practices and academic metrics through summer school. You'll hear later on tonight about ninth grade on track and how we've used that summer school time to really improve that academic metric. And then, obviously, access to district resources is a key part of summer school, especially with ESY extended school year. So with that being said, I'm going to turn this over to Ryan and Lisa. Just tell me when to click.
Hi, Ryan Doherty, Director of Student Experiences. Same guy, new role. Excited to be here. We're going to continue with what happened before the school year started with summer school. So, next slide. We had 288 students participate in the in-person portion of summer school. We had 67 students with online credit recovery. Of those 288, 238 were in academic classes and 50 of them were in driver's education. And so in comparison, right, that's probably the highest enrollment by about 30 kids since 2016, with the exception of last year. Last year, we were at about 518 students for a variety of reasons, mostly kids reacclimating after being remote for a year, and especially with some of our kids who may have struggled during remote learning. Next slide. So of our online credit recovery, 67 students earned about 39 credits, and that helped 4 students to graduate who didn't make it in May, but none then made it for an August graduation. I give a little bit more detail about those 67 students at the bottom. You can see that of the 36 students who enrolled in one course, so one semester course, they completed 30 of those. So if you enroll in one, you're more likely to finish. The 20 students who enrolled in 2, mostly that's first and second semester of a course, and so they completed 18 of those courses. So really high percentage. When we start getting into those 5 and 6 students who were in 3 or 4 more courses, this online credit recovery program is helping students who've gotten really far behind and making sure that they'll still be able to choose the future that they're looking to see for themselves. And so when we talk about supporting having an equitable, supportive environment for students, this online credit recovery program is really helpful for them specifically. Slide. So grade distribution with the regular school year, it's pretty on par with our regular school year. We had 2% Fs during the actual academic school year, 2% Fs over summer school. The A's, it was 45% during the regular school year, 41% in summer school. The one difference is that you can see at the bottom the P or I, so it's a pass or incomplete. So earlier you saw that some of our online credit recovery students did not complete, so they earned an I, but then also you only can earn a pass with online credit recovery. So that additional percentage that maybe not with the A's for 45%, some of those kids would fall within the pass. So it's a pretty even distribution between summer and the regular school year. Next slide. So one other question that we ask is, why are you taking this course? And as you can see, 58% are repeating it. There was a fairly significant jump in the questions for other, right? Because of the change in policy a couple of years ago where you can retake the course for a higher grade, some kids, they're not going to choose repeat, they're not going to choose enrichment. And so you can see 13% other. Also, sometimes our driver's education students don't know which one to choose. So they may choose enrichment, they may choose flexibility because they're looking to take driver's ed to get it out of the way before the school year, and others choose other. So, in the future, we may clarify that question to find out so that it doesn't kind of fall into an other.
Do we know, I'm sorry to interrupt, but I'm going to interrupt.
No, that's okay. I mean, we're about to switch to Lisa, so it's fine.
We know that we were expecting to have more students coming in for enrichment this summer than we have in the past, and that's been a goal for a long time for the board. Do you know in the past, I don't recall if this is a new question, or do you know what percentage of our students took for enrichment in the past? Off the top of your head, if you don't, you don't.
I don't know.
Been similar.
See, it's
Nancy.
probably
Is it similar?
I think so. You look at the report.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
It was on there.
Oh, I didn't see it on there, I'm sorry.
Well, they have every year going back. Grade distribution, reasons for attendance.
Oh, there it is. I'm so sorry. I skipped
Yeah,
over
no, it's
that.
okay. I'm
Yes,
sorry. I
sir.
should have printed out the report and put it in front
No,
of me.
no.
So it's
That's
actually
fine.
down a little bit.
Yeah, I think this year, I know that the goal has been enrichment, but coming off of 2 summers where students weren't able to like enter the world and do what they would like.
Yeah.
Summer school was a harder sell this year, for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah.
There was actually, the students who took summer school this year, more of them made it all the way through summer school than they ever had in the past, because the kids who wanted to take summer school all really made it through. I think we only had 4 or 5 students drop from attendance, whereas last year, I think we almost hit 100 students. Because one, they didn't pay for summer school. Second, it was like, I don't know, do I really want to do this? And, masking. And so the students who were there this year really wanted it. And the students who were on the fence, they wanted their free summer, for sure.
Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. My name's Lisa Ballo. I'm the Director of Special Services. There's just a little bit about what role, the main roles that I play within the district. But tonight I'm here to talk to you about ESY, and I'm the Prime Administrator and Supervisor for ESY. So what is ESY? Those are, our fun special ed acronyms, right? But ESY stands for Extended School Year. And it is a program required by law for eligible special education students. So not all special education students, but those that are eligible for the purpose of maintaining those skills that they gained throughout the year, and making sure that we don't have a lot of regression of those attained skills while they have their summer break, right? So predominantly, we're usually pretty much talking about many of our students in our multi-needs programs. At both buildings as well as at T99, who are really working on basic functional math and English and reading skills, as well as those life skills. That's predominantly that group. Other students that fall in other areas of eligibility within special ed also have access to summer school, right? Just many of the programs that Ryan already talked about. But this is specifically for that group of eligible students that we discuss at each individual IEP meeting and make a decision as an IEP team on whether or not that student is eligible. So just to give you a little bit, sorry, go back one more.
I thought you were pointing.
Yeah, just to give you a little historical perspective, prior to 2020, we utilized SACID solely as our ESY service that was eligible to that same group of students that we just discussed. But then the summer of 2020, while everybody was virtual, we put together our own virtual ESY for that population of students. And what we really found, honestly, during that time is that our students really, really just loved being with our teachers. And we just really felt like we really need to make this work for years to come. And so summer 2021 and 22, we offered in-person ESY at Downers Grove South for those eligible students.
No.
Now. So you can see our enrollment numbers here, starting off with that virtual session. I think at that point, we had some kids that were like, I'm done with school. And parents who were just like, we're kind of done with 2020. We're going to take a break during that virtual time. But again, we did have 35 students that interacted with us, and we were able to use our own staff to complete that. And as you can see, the little breakdown there of which students participated from the 3 various buildings. And then you can just see in 2021 up till this last summer at 2022, we had 81 students. Really good turnout, and I really think one of the best pieces of it is that we did all of that with all of our own District 99 staff, with the exception of 3 people, which was really, really great. The kids who are coming into District 99, who are incoming freshmen, got to meet a lot of their teachers. They got to see a building. They got to meet other students. And as well as our T99 students are interacting then too with our high school students. And there's really that cool camaraderie, like, oh, next year when I come to T99, I'll see you there. And there's a lot of that good mixing, right? That for an entire summer that wasn't happening before. So really cool to see. Next. And this is my last one. I think it comes second because what I just said I think is cooler. However, this is still pretty cool.
Yeah.
Not only did we service them within our district with our own staff, we did it 20 grand cheaper.
Yeah.
Better program
Mark
with our
approves.
own staff.
Chilly over here.
Better program with our own staff, and cheaper. So we're super excited. We'll see if we can beat that 81 number for this coming summer, and I think we will. Does anybody have any questions?
No, I think it's a great program.
It is a wonderful
I
program.
just
Win-win, and.
can't
and then
say
I
enough
love-
about it.
I love hearing stories about how we had a really tough situation in 2020, and we figured out something that, from that experience that helped us do something better, more efficient, so, thank you.
Yeah, this was a great byproduct of that,
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And our kids profit from that.
That's
Any
right.
questions for Ryan and Lisa before I release them?
No.
We've got them here.
Oh, let them go, Hank.
Thank you both.
everybody.
Thank you for all you
you.
do. Thank you.
All right, as we come back to a new school year, every year we focus on safety and security as we return. Obviously, with things going on in society recently, especially Uvalde and Highland Park, this was at the top of everybody's mind as we all return to school this year. This is, once again, part of our strategic plan under an equitable and supportive environment. We have an expectation to ensure safe and sustainable opportunities for all students, families, including access to district resources. And then we have a specific task within our strategic plan for this year to continue to work with public entities on creating a safe school environment. So this year, to kick off the school year, once again, as part of our new hybrid block schedule, we were able to integrate into the school year our active shooter drills, which consisted of 2 videos, one that looked at the ALICE program and the other that looked at our Blue Point system, which is like the fire alarm for the police. And then some of our staff, including Ken Sorensen and Omar Davis, who are on our safety and security teams and had that up in the buildings, then offered during the resource time. So access, we ran the drills. Then in the resource time that followed, that provided an opportunity for follow-up, to hear from our staff, to answer questions that we commonly heard during the drills, so that it was a pretty comprehensive program.
And the systems, the Blue Point system's up and running at both schools?
Mhm. Yeah, they were tested over the summer and at T99 as well.
Okay.
Yep.
I seem to, I remember reading something about where it wasn't at one of the schools for some reason.
No, all up and going.
Okay, good.
Yep.
So, good.
And then we've refocused on ensuring that all exterior doors are secured, locked, and the biggest thing is not propped, right?
Right.
Making sure that, nobody's propping doors. And if we've integrated into our practices this year, if a door is propped, we're going back to cameras, we're seeing who propped them, we're following up with the staff member that propped it, or if it was a student, we're following up with the staff member that was responsible for that student, if there was one at that point. So really making sure that, we're doubling down on that. And then change for this year is that all classroom doors are closed and locked during instructional periods. So that'd be like a general classroom space, not a library or those kinds of things. But every classroom door is closed and locked during instructional class periods. We wander the halls to make sure that that's done and in place. We know that from all of the studies out there that that is the easiest, most effective way to secure a school. So we're really focusing on that as well this year. Now, one of the concerns with that is, can a police officer get, or a fire, a firefighter get into those spaces if need to be? We have always had access to a key for police and firefighters at various locations in the building that they can access. But in response to what happened at Uvalde, we worked with the Downers Grove Police Department to issue keys they go along with each patrol car key ring. So they're inventoried, they're secured, but when an officer is on duty, they then have access to the exterior and interior of the buildings.
Do our doors, are the locks, do they have removable cores? They could be rekeyed, or do you have to change the entire lock?
No, you'd be able to change the core.
You can rekey it?
Yeah, but it would be very expensive either way.
So I'm wondering, how often do we think we might want to or need to do that?
I don't think we need to very often because our key security is very high.
Right, now we're issuing more keys though, right?
But these are all inventoried.
Okay.
So the way that they work for the Downers Grove Police Department is every key is inventoried and placed on a key ring. That key ring, it can only be removed from that key ring with a specialized tool. They're checked in and out at the beginning of each shift and made sure that they're secure and returned. So if they lose that key, they also lost the key to their squad car. So
Okay.
And I did, Chief Gillette, who works really closely with us, I mean, the police department are incredible partners with us. He and I had a very long conversation about key security and how that works. I had very big concerns heading into that conversation, and Chief Gillette made me feel very comfortable with how they secure keys and would maintain the security of them. So
And this is something probably other school districts are doing as well?
I think that after this past school year, this is something that many school districts are looking at how to make that happen.
Okay.
So, and then we have a current intergovernmental agreement with the police department for our school resource officers. One of the things that's been added by state law in the last year is body-worn cameras that must be on every officer, including school resource officers. So we are working on an intergovernmental agreement. We kind of have an agreement right now, but we need an official intergovernmental agreement that the board would approve and that the village would approve around those. So we're finishing that up with legal counsel, and that'll come to the board soon. Once that's done, we're going to reevaluate our entire intergovernmental agreement, make sure that the key aspects are captured in that, make sure we modernize that. It's been almost 20 years since we've revisited that intergovernmental agreement, and the world's changed a little bit over that time. So we just, it's a good opportunity for us to just update that and make sure that we all know how it's supposed to work. We also, when we talk about safety and security, something that's commonly overlooked is things like cybersecurity, which our district has made a huge investment in over the last decade, and that we're one of the leaders in the state and the nation on cybersecurity. One of the things that we did this year that kind of holds hands with physical security is that we did a vulnerability assessment and what they call penetration testing, which evaluates, can somebody get into your building, and once they're in that building, can they access your network or some of your critical network infrastructure. So the feedback from that testing helps inform just overall safety and security that go along with that. And then going on this fall are then tabletop safety exercises that go along. Scott's running these with Jim and in cooperation with the SROs on campus, where there's an actual safety and security situation that's brought to the table, and then we process through that with everybody involved. So Scott and Jim put everybody virtually in a certain location in the building and then introduce some kind of a situation to us that we don't know what it is heading into it, and then we process through that situation together as kind of a dry run to then assess and learn from. So all of these things factor in together to make sure that we're offering as safe of a campus as we possibly can. Up on our website, We do offer information on both of these topics. So if somebody goes to our website and searches for safety, they'll find the overview of all of our safety practices. And if they search for data security, they'll find the overview of all of our data security practices. But all of these things play into the whole overarching work of safety and security.
And this, oh, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I was gonna say, and this is in addition to all the changes we made with the master facility plan to enhance the physical structure of our school, to enhance security as well.
Correct. And those are outlined on that website as well, with secured entrances, adding our security team and our lead security officers, and all of those pieces are part of the safety practices we share publicly. And as the board knows, there's far more safety practices that for security purposes we don't share with the general public, right? So for everything that's here in the public, that's the tip of the iceberg of our safety practices across the district. Any questions? Yeah.
Are the, because Joanne and I had the opportunity to sit in one of the Alice trainings on the 31st. We had, I think, a group of sophomores, I think.
Yep.
Some of them were not super talkative. They didn't have a lot of questions when it came to that part. Have you noticed in other, or I don't know if you know this, other grade levels, other classes, were there more discussion among students? Was there any sort of topics that came up?
Yeah, I think that, obviously it varies based on class to class and the group of students in front of you, but also students, this isn't brand new to students either, right? Sophomore, a room full of sophomores, they all saw this last year, right? So
new to them.
no, it's review, right? So I think amongst our ninth graders, there was a lot more discussion, I know, in those settings. Luke and Caitlin, I'll put you on the spot. You guys are coming back for the fourth time around for this kind of information. So what was it like in your access for your Alice training?
Kind of like how you touched on, since many of the seniors were returning, we just watched the videos, and then we didn't really have many questions since we've been through the Alice procedures, but our teachers did give us an outline of where the Blue Point systems were in the building, just to refresh, because it varies from floor to floor, so give us a more perspective. But other than that, since it was review, there wasn't many questions asked about it.
The class period I was in during the time we were learning about this, obviously, once again, we've been through this for 4 years, and sometimes it feels repetitive, but we obviously think it's important. It's important to know what's going on and what you should do in these types of situations. And personally, my class was very engaged in the video and everything that was going on. And afterwards, the teachers, I personally have 2 teachers at the time, and they were trying to engage the students in a discussion and trying to figure out, oh, did you understand it? Because sometimes there's students who will watch it and maybe they have questions or they're too scared to ask something. So they definitely made it a very comfortable environment to ask any questions you have and just be open about it. And I think it was very helpful because, in a sense, you're supposed to know this, and if you don't, then something should be changed.
I had to admit, with those kids, they may not have been engaging in a big discussion, but whenever you called on them with a question, they knew the answer right away, so
Yeah.
it was.
Yeah.
So, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, we're going to have Courtney and Arwen come forward for the update on the hybrid block schedule. As the board saw this presentation in advance, you know that every one of our 4 strategic directions are addressed this year, obviously through the hybrid schedule. Obviously, this is a huge aspect that we're working on throughout this school year, and it's interwoven inside of everything we're doing. You can see many of our strategic expectations we touch on through the work of the strategic plan. You can see expectations. You heard about that with access and those kinds of things, or with our drills and those kinds of things. But there's a big focus on social emotional learning, as Caitlin and Luca both alluded to earlier, and just knowing how the school works. We even heard our students today talk about that in our student perspectives. And really, this idea of building these relationships, I think I mentioned both to Joanna and Chris on the way out, it'll be interesting to see, like, that group of sophomores that you both came in and saw, they're going to be together with those same two teachers for the next 2 years. It'd be very interesting to go back 2 years from now and see what that room is like, after those students and teachers are together for multiple years. But it's a different type of relationship building that happens through this. You can see there's many of our strategic expectations that we're meeting, and I didn't even list all of them. These are just the ones that I anticipate will connect to what is shared today. And then remember, while this time is going on in this new schedule, our students are doing access and resource. Our staff are also engaging in their professional learning during that time as well. All right, so there is a lot that weaves into this. I won't read it all to you. The public can visit this online as well. It's up in board docs. But you can see there is a great deal of the strategic plan and the administrative tasks that connect back to what we're doing through this new schedule.
In my reading through it too, I mean, there's a lot of tasks there that it's, as compared to the traditional schedule we had before, this accomplishes it better. And then there's other things that only get accomplished with this block schedule that we couldn't do.
Yeah, one of the key things, Mike, is if you remember back to one of the key words in the strategic plan and the directions and expectations is ensuring that these things happen.
Yes.
And in the past, many of these things would happen, but it depended on the teacher you had or the schedule you had or what coach you had. And what the access and resource time allows for is making sure that every student has an opportunity to engage with these concepts and these expectations moving forward, which is significantly different than just leaving it to chance that these things happen. Like every kid had the opportunity, if they had questions regarding the drill, to have questions answered, right, and to dialogue about it. There was a second revisit of that in resource if there was questions. It was identified if after that there was adults up on the stage that you could stick around and talk to them, or you knew who to follow up with afterwards. Where in the past we would have covered the drill, but it wouldn't have been in the same way that we did it here. So, we're much better at what we're doing as a result of this change.
Excellent.
All right, I'm going to start with North High.
Very good. Luca is going to start. She's going to talk through, first off, what's going well, and then some things that we're still working through. And I'll jump in here a couple of times to explain a few things that we've already kind of troubleshooted, and but I'll let Luca go. And she's giving us feedback from our student advisory team last week, and we had probably, about 25 students, I think, from all grade levels, and we spent almost the whole time talking about the new schedule. So I felt bad because we didn't get to homecoming, but but they had a lot to say, and it was really interesting. So this is kind of a summary of what they had to say. So Luca, I'll turn it over to you.
So starting off with a great positive is that last year we got used to the 50-minute classes, and a lot of the teachers try to cram in the time to teach a lesson or just go through a test or a quiz. And now that we have more time and teachers are trying to adapt to those changes or the longer class periods, we're able to incorporate more brain breaks, which is better for students individually and all together, because after learning a lesson you might feel a little drained, and in a sense having a brain break, it allows individuals to get to know each other, because either you're talking with your group that you're sitting with in math, or you're doing something while you're up and then you're stretching, and it just helps overall. Also, students, once again with the longer class periods, students are given more time to finish their work. I know that personally, if you take rigorous classes, that you might get homework piled on, and so having that time where you learn a lesson for maybe up to 40 minutes and then having almost 50 minutes to do your work is very helpful in a sense. And even just with the longer periods for resource, I know it also helps a lot, because you're giving that a lot of time to finish what you might have, and then you can just engage with other students around you in the commons or up in the library. Getting more out of the lessons, like I said earlier, even though the lessons might be the same amount of time, maybe up to 40 minutes, up to a whole class period on a normal Monday, Tuesday, and Friday schedule, I think that it's easier for us to understand the lesson in a sense because you have more time to ask questions instead of cramming it and trying to rush the lesson. And there's more time to maybe stop a teacher in the middle and then try to have them explain what they're trying to teach you. And once again, you're getting to know everyone, you're trying to get closer, you're trying to make new friends just to get to know your peers and the teacher individually, because I know there might not be that sense that you're close with your teacher, but now it allows you to feel like you can be open to your teacher about any problems that you have in the class. And then another great thing is that with the brain breaks, teachers are starting to learn how to adapt to the schedule in a sense, because now we have the A, B, and C lunch. And with the B lunch, obviously it's in the middle, but teachers are doing a great job trying to overcome that challenge and splitting up activities, having maybe notes in the beginning, letting students go to lunch, and then coming back to an activity that relates to that lesson, which is great, just amazing, having that time to take a break in the middle for students to go eat or have a snack or talk to other people. And then overall, I personally think that this is great that we just made a big change. Even though it might seem overwhelming at the beginning, I think that it's making us students individually stronger because we're learning how to adapt to these changes and we're learning how to just learn in a new environment. And overall, I think it's helping everyone be positive and more so get everything done at the same time.
I think one of the things that stuck out, I think during when we started feedback, I think some of the students were a little bit tentative to say that I actually like the schedule. And it was really cute because a couple of people started to speak up and then a few more did. And while certainly there's always things to tweak when you're going through a big change like this, I think overall the sentiment is that students are adapting and they're doing well at that adaptation. And so, the students, it's funny, I was laughing because one student had mentioned something about B lunch and then a few other students jumped in, we love B lunch. And it's like, that was causing some anxiety with students because they didn't know, and teachers, because they didn't quite know how that was going to work. But we got some really good feedback that teachers are really breaking that up very well for kids. So
if I can interrupt, just as a parent, I got some comments, that they thought the B lunch was going to be awkward, and I've actually gotten a lot of parents who are, more I don't think I have the B lunch, but other parents have said that they're in favor of it, and I do also think, that it's giving kids, I think having a senior more of a vision of what the next steps are like in terms of planning your day, whether it's your day between 8 and 3:20 or your day, for my daughter sometimes between 6 a.m. and 6 p.m. And so I think it's and I would almost say in the beginning, some people were kind of underwhelmed, like, what are we supposed to do for an hour and a half? And as we've settled in, it's definitely, taken shape and they're finding things to do.
I will say too, it's funny that you say that because a lot of the kids mentioned, and it's something that's on our next slide, and that I think is going to evolve over time as kids start to get more work is, what do I do with all this time? and at the beginning of the year, there's not as much work, there's not as many things yet. And so they are really starting to think about that genuinely, about how to use that time. So, but a lot of kids have said it's really positive because, and your daughter's a good example, I have a lot of things after school and I can get those things done on a lot of days.
And it's also on a Tuesday or on a Wednesday, not that, they only have to prepare for four, they don't have to prepare for as many things. And so it gives them a little bit of a reprieve on those nights too. And that helps with some of their other activities.
And if you all remember, one of the key pieces of feedback that we always got from graduates was, academically, you do a great job of preparing us. I wish that you would have prepared me better into managing my time and to organizing myself and some of those executive functioning things, which are really built into this new schedule, right? I mean, access and resource time has been set aside for the the resources we have at school, how to manage your time, how to goal set, how to be productive, how to schedule your time out, how to use a personal planner, like have all been part of these lessons stacked at the beginning of the year to make sure that as that workload increases, students are prepared to manage that time.
Well, the real world, we want go-getters. We want people who will take initiative, people that don't need to be told how to solve the problem. They'll go right into it, and so this is doing that. And this B-lunch idea really resonates with me. I hadn't thought about that before. Just, I don't, how many times have you had a problem that you were working on, stepped away from it, and then came back? We tell our kids to do this as parents, right? Just let sit for a minute, come back to it. So,
and you'll see it much clearly.
Yeah, and to see this actually even taking place now in our schedule is really kind of cool.
Pretty awesome.
All right.
I also think it's not that I would push. We don't ever have a good night if someone has to stay up until midnight. And
Oh, man.
it's not
Right?
And so I think this is helpful in
Mm-hmm.
that piece too. They can hopefully have a more normal sleep schedule.
And then the next day,
Yeah.
it's a consequence of
Exactly.
what, it's like, oh, man. Yeah.
Well, we know not everything is perfect, so we definitely talked about a few things that we're continuing to work on. So Luca, go ahead.
So a lot of the feedback that we heard from students during our advisory meeting last Tuesday was that, like we just mentioned, the time given, although we might think that most of the time is used for maybe homework, some students I know have periods of time where they're sitting in the Commons for 3 hours straight. And personally, I know 3 of my friends sit in the Commons for 3 hours straight, and they finish their homework for maybe up to an hour and then don't know what to do with their time. Maybe they will go up to the library, or they'll go maybe get a snack from the cafe. But other than that, once again, something to consider is trying to figure out ways to use that time in an efficient way. But like earlier I had mentioned, we're using like the resource time now with teachers trying to teach us lessons like college planning and everything like that. And that's definitely helping. But like underclassmen who don't want to learn about college right now because they're not applying, they might need something else to maybe help them with that time to fill it up. Also, trying to spread out activities in block classes. I know that most of the teachers are doing a good job trying to spread everything out and like maybe trying to like the B lunch and have the maybe notes in the beginning and then assignments later. But one of the bigger issues right now are the assessments giving, and most of the teachers are spreading their assessments out on the same day. And so if you have most of the same classes with other teachers, like if you have a double math like I personally do, I have 2 tests of math almost on the exact day every single week. So personally, most of the tests or quizzes you're taking, they all stack up on the same day, and most of them are on a Friday, which isn't very appealing to most students because by the end of the week, you're already in the mindset of it's the weekend, and maybe in a sense it might be downgrading your test score, and so maybe that's something also greatly to consider as to trying to help and spread out that time or having specific days as to, like we did last year, which was very helpful, was I know we did the exams on specific days for each department, and I saw that most students were happy with that, and it definitely helped lower their stress. Also, like we talked about earlier, the importance of all the videos that we're getting during access periods and making sure that the teachers are giving those out and that there are discussions that are being held. Obviously, the discussions might not be so long and take the entire period, but I think it's very important that we take time to make sure that everyone is getting that information in the correct way so that nothing is maybe undermined in a way, and so that all the students are able to get the access that they need to, like, say, the importance of an ALICE presentation and be able to be aware of what is going on in the school. And then similar issues with that, more so about the lunch, in a sense. Crowded A-lunch is definitely one that was brought up during that 50-minute, and it was definitely a discussion because during our A-lunch, you can spend up to 25 minutes standing in line trying to get your lunch, and by the time, say you don't want to eat pizza every day, and by the time you get to maybe the tacos or the quesadillas, they might be out because you're waiting in line for too long and it's overcrowded. And a result of the overcrowding, a lot of people had said that they also have sensitivity to loud noise, and their experience during those lunch periods isn't very enjoyable because of the noise level being way too loud. And then you're also not able to work on your work at the same time because obviously who wants to work on maybe a reading or an essay while it's very loud. And a part of that, there were some mentions of an open campus, like it's been mentioned several times last year, and over the course a lot of individuals want open campus, but that's obviously a greater discussion that involves a lot of different people to incorporate themselves.
What does that mean, like being able to go out?
Yeah, yes.
Being able to leave and come back,
Yes.
basically.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, yeah.
So,
Yeah.
to address a couple of things that Luca talked about, it was funny, we've been talking about that A lunch for a while, and the kids echoed exactly what we have been working on. And we are definitely moving some things around for second semester, so that is one thing that we were working on. And again, that noise level is a result of that crowded A lunch. And our library has responded, and they have made it a quiet study place for that time, because they know kids are looking for some quieter places. So they've adjusted and adapted a little bit too, to help us out. And then we're continuing to work through our professional development with our staff. I think one of the things that I've heard consistently in our couple of sessions that we've had with staff is that this is obviously a really big change for them too. And they're finding that their pacing is off a little bit, and that's very natural. And so we've taken them from a traditional 8-period day that many have known for their whole teaching career and turned it upside down a little bit. And while they still have those 3 8-period days, there's 2 block days that do throw off their pacing a little bit. So they're working through that and figuring that out. And we're working with them through professional development sessions that we have with them to continually talk about the things that we can do to help them through that. So, and to address any other issues that they might be finding during the block schedule.
To be clear, when we talk about pacing, we're talking about how we're moving through the curriculum,
Yep.
right?
Yeah,
So,
exactly.
For anybody
exactly.
that might be following along, so,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. So,
Right.
you know, some teachers are finding they're finishing earlier than expected, or later than expected. And so adjusting through those times and, you know, to figure out what they need to do and when.
Overall, in terms of content, are most feeling like they're on track?
I think so, yeah. You know, again, a couple of issues with pacing, and like some of their sections are maybe a day ahead of the other ones, and so they're kind of trying to figure that out.
Yeah.
And I think too, we're going through time and just figuring those things out as we go along. But I would say for the most part, I think they're pretty much on track, as of right now anyway.
It's still early.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And continued conversations about spreading out those assessments. I told the students that I will be really curious when we meet again in October to see where they are. And that's something that we'll continue to monitor with our leadership team and with our teachers too, so.
And then the hearing that there's students, though, 3 hours with.
Yeah.
So we
really-
have a really very small percentage of students who have a very unique schedule where they have 2 periods off. So they have like a study hall and a lunch period on top of each other. And again, I think it's, please don't quote me, but I think it's about less than 20 students. So it's not that many, but there's definitely a small percentage of students in that very unique boat. And that's just the way the schedule happened. We looked at those students because we were concerned about that. But it's a small number of students, and I know some of our counselors have met with some of the students to see if they can add a class, and some did and some chose not to, but they do have a large chunk of time there.
There's no way around that, like figure out how to run data and
Sure.
don't have a student that would fall in that.
There's just so many permutations of the schedule,
Right.
depending on how courses fall. There will always be a random subsample, especially with students that have a study hall,
Yeah.
because they're naturally creating an extra block of time in their schedule, and that's what they signed. In some ways, they signed up to have that extra
It is,
space
yeah.
in their schedule. It just backed up to another free time in how it fell. So it will be, like counselors are meeting with some of the students to talk about how to plan out
Yeah.
that time, or do you want to fill that time?
Can they volunteer to
They
help?
can, yeah, for sure.
So maybe that would be
Absolutely.
a way that they know that
We've put out,
a couple days a week they could volunteer to help a teacher or help
Yeah.
in the office. I don't know. They could.
yeah, we've put out
stapling.
announcements for that as well and made students aware of
Now,
that.
any of these students freshmen, because that's a lot for a freshman.
Maybe.
There
Okay,
might
could be.
be, but it's not going to be a large number of freshmen. I couldn't tell you for certain, though.
I would have guessed that it might have been more likely. I mean, I know that coming in, with my students, that first year, that was a discussion my wife and I had with our students, whether or not that was something with a couple of mine. We thought that might be, especially my oldest coming in, we felt that was definitely beneficial to him as he gets acclimated to high school, so they didn't kind of overload himself. These are probably, we're probably learning some lessons right now too, that with our counselors and how we communicate with parents and students going forward and how they make their schedules, that this is something to be on the lookout for.
I think we're going to see a lot fewer students selecting study halls.
I think
I
so
agree.
too.
I think it gives you a chance to take more,
Yeah.
I mean, and
But I know as a parent, I would appreciate, especially as an eighth grader going into a ninth grade, I'd appreciate knowing more about that for some of our future freshmen.
And some of
parents.
this is just the nature of lived experience, right? That next year we'll be able to say, like, we
Yes.
heard from many of our students that,
Yeah.
this created the time in the day with, you really didn't need a study hall and, but until you live it, it's hard for, people to envision it or to believe that that's actually a true statement or
Well,
not.
we can't make a change like this and not have some things be a little
Right.
less than ideal.
Yeah.
And it's gonna take a little time to perfect it, but I know we will.
The other question I had with the crowded lunches, so are the kids even able to go out on the lawn or anything? They just can't go off campus?
They
That's
can't
correct.
leave the campus.
Yes.
Yeah.
They can go outside, yeah.
I know they have this whole thing with this whole food, I know it's a whole different discussion, but food trucks, another thing is, I know there were, like the grade schools, they do that fun lunch.
Oh
Where you-
my goodness, I forgot
Yeah,
about fun
but I
lunch.
mean, that's a whole different thing, but I was
Yeah.
just trying to figure out how people could get food and actually enjoy that extra time that's been built in for them instead of doing it in the
Yeah,
center.
but we're serving better food.
We are.
We are, and that is also
Yeah,
leading.
that's also why.
Yes, yeah, that is also.
Success,
double-edged
yeah.
sword.
I will say we have opened up our cafeteria earlier, so on each of those block days because we have kids who are in there for resource time, that's technically not their lunch period. But it is time for a fine time for them to eat lunch. We've opened up our cafeteria earlier so that they can access food, and it helps to alleviate a little bit of that stress during that lunch period.
Right.
That has helped a little bit. And of course, we're starting to get into the groove, so it's certainly not perfect, but our cafeteria has responded very well. And they've managed it, and it's been better. I've gone in there and spot checked a couple of times, and there's been food available.
Right.
So everyone gets to eat, but at the beginning there's a bit of a line, especially during that lunch.
Is it?
Well, with our kids, they eat all the time.
They do.
I'm just gonna be honest, and the more our cafeteria is open for those possibilities, it's good for us and it's good for them because they study better on a full stomach than they do.
I remember hearing students that said, some of my daughter's friends, she ate all the time, but said that they didn't eat because they just didn't have time to eat.
Right.
But even if you were in line right now for 20 minutes, which I stood for the first week and I measured our lines as to how long they were, the longest lines were 20 minutes. There's still 20 minutes to eat that meal once you're out of line, right? So there's still plenty of time, even if you stood in line for 20 minutes to eat.
Kids can eat in like 3.5
Right.
minutes.
I think it's the
The
social time though.
Yeah.
Yeah. But the other thing that happens at the beginning of the year is kids don't know a routine yet. They haven't developed a routine yet. So everybody goes to the line all at once. And now we're getting into, well, I'm going to go work on my homework and then I'm going to get into line once it dies down a little bit, right? So as time goes on, it kind of works itself out.
The other piece that was new too is this was the first year that students had to have their ID to scan for
Yes.
lunch. So they used to be able to just type in their code and now they have to scan their
That's
ID. So in the beginning,
Mm-hmm.
and we're just starting to get there. But in the beginning, and like Dr. DeVent, I would stand and spot check, but students, and adults would do this too. So it's not just teenagers, it's adults too. Wait in line for 20 minutes, get up there, and then be like, oh yeah, my ID, and then get it out.
Or it's in my locker.
And then scan,
Yes.
and then, so we've been sitting there saying, have your ID out now, get it ready. But students have been adapting to that too. So that was just one piece, not only, like the different lines, and then students do have kind of 3 different lunch experiences. So they have their lunch Monday, Wednesday, Friday. They have lunch on Wednesday and lunch on Thursday, and it's like 3 different maybe times of day students. And so
Social
students are
groups,
adjusting
yeah.
to the different social groups. When do I go in line? But the piece of the ID, we've kind of worked out and made sure students have it ready when they get up to scan. But we've all probably been in line when you've waited in line a very long time and the person in front of you
Yeah.
still isn't ready. But we've been working through a lot of that too. It's and you'll see in a moment the South slides are similar, but it's just getting better every day.
Yeah.
Is it ever, could we foresee a system where students could actually place an order ahead of time and pick it up? I mean, that's what the
Yes.
rest of the world is doing now.
Yes, Jeree has been talking to Chartwells about those pre-ordering options that might be available in the future, yes.
And then it's just making room for the pickup
For the
area.
pickups,
Yeah.
yeah. It's another problem, then the pickup line is long. But yeah, those are all of the things you see happening in society, we evaluate as well.
All right, good.
All right, I'll turn it over to South High.
Yeah, so it's actually very, very similar, and Caitlin gave a really nice preview of everything in her opening, so I'll kind of start, and then Caitlin can jump in. So we are just starting our Principal Student Advisory Council at South, so we haven't met yet, students just applied, and we're having our first meeting in a couple weeks. So some of the feedback we gathered from student answers to their applications, and then like you heard Caitlin say, I was able to visit different classrooms and just kind of ask students these 2 questions. Tell me what's going well, and tell me what we still need to work on. So overwhelmingly, one of the biggest pieces of positive feedback is that students really like the 8:20 start time. That extra 20 minutes in the morning.
Caitlin's saying yes.
They feel a more relaxed pace. Some students says they're sleeping 20 minutes longer. Other students said that they didn't really realize that it started 20 minutes later, and so they were getting up the same time and just having so much more time. Like, it was just relaxing, like pace more relaxed. So we heard really positive feedback about that. The next one, Caitlin can jump in on too, mostly from 9th and 10th graders. They're just excited about the time to get to know their peers and teachers in Access. So they know they're going to be together all 4 years. They're excited about meeting peers in different ways, teachers in different ways. Not really something to work on, but the 11th and 12th graders are kind of like, yeah, okay. Like, you're saying that we're going to be together all 4 years, but the seniors are like, yeah, we're leaving. But it's been really positive from 9th and 10th graders, that piece. The increased free time during resource, students say we have more autonomy. We love that. We have less homework, similar to what we heard North students say. Juniors and seniors with that 5th and 6th period resource are so happy to have that freedom to leave early. They appreciate the trust and the freedom that we've instilled in them, that they've earned it. I was chatting with a group of freshmen in the Commons on one of those days, and they were like, Ms. Lip, do you think freshmen will ever get to leave early? And I'm like, well, I will never say never, but probably not. But they seem to accept that too.
Yeah, but by the time they do it, they won't be freshmen.
No, right. You heard, I think Luca talked about this, the students love having that coffee bar open during resource. And then Dr. DeVet said this too, that students really for a while weren't ready to admit out loud they like the schedule. Like, I'd say, how's the schedule going? I actually really like it. Like, they weren't sure that they were ready to say that publicly, but that's coming. Anything you want to add?
Just like with the resource, I know mostly it's been like presentations about like dean stuff and just like some things that we need to know. But I know like for the future, it's like being planned to like have a day when you're going over like the FAFSA for college, or like different things of like how to apply to college, or like scholarship things. So I'm like really excited, and I think that's a really good time built into the day to get that information, instead of like having to make extra time in your already busy schedule to like go into the college and career section or career center and just have that like readily available for you. So I think that's like a really nice thing that we're providing, especially like for seniors who are going through college, like admissions, and just having that time like to have like a conversation with someone. I think is a really good like built-in time for students.
There's some really good programming on the way that Gina, Ryan, and the team have been working on, so we'll be excited to share some of those. Too early for debuting yet, but there's
Okay.
some really
Okay.
cool stuff
On the way.
on the
Teaser.
way. A little
Yeah.
teaser.
Yeah.
Get it tuned back in again. All right.
And then just things that we're still working on too. You heard both of our students mention that students like the brain breaks during those 78-minute blocks. Our students are asking for more of them. So they're noticing and very aware of like, in these 4 classes, it's working great, but in these 3, I'd really like more of a brain break,
Okay, so
please.
What exactly is a brain
So
break?
it could be a number of different things. The class is 78 minutes long. So essentially, we're asking teachers to vary up their activities within those 78 minutes. So sometimes we previewed for our teachers during that like professional development time, really quick, like 3 to 4 minute, like YouTube videos that you can show students. So we had showed one about optical illusions. Like the one, for example, with like, is this dress black and blue or is this dress gold and white? And it flashes like 5 or 6 different pictures for students and just gives their brain a chance to work differently, kind of a reset in between transitions. So there's some formal things like that that teachers are doing, but also it might be, we were talking with a science teacher and students were working on a lab. So they really had kind of the whole time to work on a lab and it was chunked into all different sections. And the teacher had encouraged students just in their individual groups, after you finish tasks 1, 2, and 3, I want everyone to like put everything down and take 5 minutes just to do what you need to do. So whether you need to take a break and go on your phone for a couple of minutes or talk to your neighbor for a couple of minutes, not about the lab, but just kind of that just break, let your mind reset. I guess kind of similar, mimicking what we talked about with the bee lunch, but a little less formal and less structured. And students are feeling it in classes where at least they're perceiving that not to has happened on a level and they're asking for more of it and really recognizing the success of when they're seeing it.
One of the things that our North students have done, along with our radio and TV students, we had the video announcements before every Friday, and our announcement structure has changed a little bit. And so what they've done is create videos for brain breaks. So here's 4 to 5 minutes. Watch a fun little video. Disconnect from your academics for those 4 minutes and watch this fun little video. That's like a sequence of events that happens all school year. So we're kind of getting creative in some of those brain breaks too, so teachers can have a pool of resources for those things.
Sometimes it might just, sometimes we, like, if we don't been in sometimes a long meeting and the facilitator might just be like, okay, everyone just take a minute, stretch, stand up, walk around for a bit. So it's just that because it's 78 minutes. One of the things we put in hindsight, and Caitlin talked about this, is so the first, the resource activities were mandatory for all students in the beginning. And as administrators, we said, okay, first we're going to go over, introduce students to their counselor, and then, first we started with deans, make sure students know rules, then we'll introduce them to their counselor, and then we'll teach them safety procedures all 3 weeks in a row. Which really is a really good, solid way to start the school year off, there's no doubt. But in hindsight and planning for next year, to mix it up a little bit so that students know what resource is going to be about, because I think the first few weeks they were like, oh my gosh, you're just gonna make us go to the auditorium and you're gonna talk to us every time. And we were like, no, just the first 3, and then we're gonna do different things. But our hindsight as a planning team was there's really not a need to do all 3 of those in the very first 3 weeks. So if we had been able to spread it out, like we just did our Mustang Fury activities and athletics fair, maybe that's the first one. And then the second one is counselors or deans. So just so students know what it's going to feel like as opposed to the first 3.
Yeah.
I don't know if it was the best introduction, even though it made perfect sense in the plan.
Hindsight.
This one you heard about, and it is very unique, and it's not that many students, but it is accurate that if students have 7th or 8th period study hall, and then it's stacked on a lunch of one of those block days, they have a very long period of time. And similar to what Courtney said, it's mixed. Some students are like, oh, this is too long, I'm gonna add a class. I talked to one student today though, and I said, in hindsight, if you did it again, would you have signed up for a study hall? And he's like, well, yeah, because I love it on Monday, Tuesday, and Friday. so it just depends. It depends on the student. I think both buildings were really good at customizing for individual students' needs. So we've already been working with some students just one day a week. They're going to be a staff aide in the dean's office or a staff aide in the counseling office, or even working as a PE leader, even though it's only the one day a week. It's a chance for students that are saying, oh, this is too long for me in the Commons. No, I don't want another class because I want to keep my study hall. But we're working really creatively with each individual student to find the time. And for every student that says it's too much time, there's 3 others that are like, shh.
Yeah.
Like, I love this time, I want it. So it's just really working with each student and their families and figuring out what's going to work best.
I think you point out something important that I did not say is that it's only once a week.
It's only once a week.
It's not like it's happening every day. It's
Right.
one time a week that they have this large chunk of time. So to your point, there's, for every kid
Right.
who doesn't want it, there are 4 kids who do. So
They could be artists.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. The next one, I put an asterisk because it was actually on my other slide too. On the last slide, although I don't think I highlighted this part of it, a student said, like, one thing that's so nice is that I don't have to go to all my classes every day. So it's like, it's such a nice break that I don't go to every class every day. A couple of kids said that. And then a couple of students were like, well, one thing is that I don't get to go to every class every day. So again, that split. A few students mentioned just the sequential nature of the courses in math and world language, that having the one day off might be a little more challenging in those classes, but we're working through it. And then the other one, kind of like we talked about with the lines, at the end of the month, we're opening a second kiosk coffee bar area at South High, so there'll be 2 lines. So 2 lines for students to go through, because that line is really long, especially during the afternoon resource periods. At this moment, at least, all the food lines aren't open at that 2 o'clock start resource time, but that line is, and it's very, very popular.
And that one would be the good one to order ahead of time.
That would be great, like the Starbucks app.
Yeah.
Right. Caitlin, what do you want to add?
I think like when you touched on the 8th period off, I know especially for seniors that's kind of been like difficult, especially because a lot of us have 8th period off for varsity athletics, or just because like senior year, like we earned the 8th period off. So I know it's kind of awkward during the day because it's like also when all the lunch periods are, so it seems like a lot longer of time that you're just sitting there, and then all these people are coming in for lunch at the same time, so it can seem a little overwhelming. So like I know a lot of seniors would love if it's like an open campus, but obviously with that comes a lot of different rules you have to put in place for other students. So that's just the main thing I've heard, especially from upperclassmen, because having 8th period off during the normal days is great, getting to come home early, but just on that block day, that awkward pause is a little much. But I didn't know about the coffee bar opening up, so I'm very excited about that.
We're very excited.
Those lines get really long, very quickly.
Tell your friends.
I will
Looking forward to that for sure.
I will remind the board that a few years ago, the problem was we didn't have enough students using our food service.
That's right.
So,
Oh, no.
So put your order in early.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
10 minutes too, you can,
Yeah, exactly.
and make sure they get the name right.
It's really good. It's really good. I go in there every day.
Yeah, the food's fabulous.
Yes.
Yeah.
And
So-
I go in there every day.
Additional questions? I have one. Have we had any feedback from our TCD students? I know that there were some concerns about how that was going to work. And
Not heard.
No, none, other than like similar to other students at the very beginning. They were just like, how is it going to work for TCD? Like, just because it was an extra layer.
have we actually tried to find out?
So, part of there was some confusion at the beginning of the year, because we break TCD into 2 sections. We have morning TCD and afternoon TCD. Our morning bus is going out before school starts. So there was some confusion in the very beginning of the year, because students heard, wait, the school day starts at 8:20, but I received this email that said I have to be there at 8 o'clock. So there was a few kids that actually missed the bus in the very beginning of the school year, but we got past that, we ironed it all out. And the reason for that is we want to make sure students have a great experience at TCD, and we want them to have as much time at TCD as they can possibly have.
You bet.
So once we got beyond that, which was just the first week, I have not heard anything from TCD or
Okay.
from our students.
Well, That's good.
I've talked to a couple of students that I know who have said in the beginning, the bus was confusing, and once that was worked out, it's really just working seamlessly now. Like, it feels like a normal part of their schedule, a normal part of their day. Have you heard anything differently? No, yeah, it's just working. I'd like the bus in the beginning was the most confusing part.
Okay.
And when we planned the schedule, I met several times with TCD, so that our students would have a similar time, similar
Great.
period of time at TCD.
I'd gotten
Especially
a
for
few
some of the
questions
programs.
about that prior to this, sorry, over the summer. So that's great to hear. And we've got a record number of students going to
We do.
TCD, and it's something we hope continues. So.
Yeah, to utilize that,
Yep.
oh, gosh.
So this is fabulous, thank you so much, because
Yes.
I think we've all waited with bated breath. I did have one question about our teachers, and I'm not so much, well, a couple questions about our teachers. One, how are they adapting to this? As you said, some of their cadence is off or their pacing is off. But what are we doing to evaluate to make sure that teachers are maximizing the schedule, using it in the best way they can?
So the first thing that we implemented, because we knew that this would be, of course, an adjustment for our staff, is that our professional development, as I was talking about earlier, we have had, after next week is our third session with staff. And in each of those sessions, we've been, it's really been focused on teaching in the hybrid block, and really specifically focused on the block days. And so we've had teachers in groups and talking to each other about what they're doing during those block times, in specific, talking about specific topics with each other. And that's both across departments and in same departments. And so they can get ideas from each other about what to do. Again, that pacing seems to be probably the biggest issue that I've heard from staff through those sessions. Both Keith and I have been attending those sessions, and that's probably the biggest thing. And so our instructional coaches have been working with our teachers to kind of go through that. Okay, here's some ideas, and they have been really good about, there's like basically 6 frameworks that teachers can use to teaching in a block. And so we talk about those and talk through those, and what does it look like for your opener, your engaging activities, and your closer. And that's really what we've been focusing on with staff, to help them through that, because it is an issue, right? I mean, I'm a teacher for 21 years. I've been used to the same thing, right? So it's an adjustment for sure. And that pacing, even on the 8 period days, a couple of minutes off can really throw off a teacher who's been doing this for a long time, right? So we've really just been kind of working through that in our professional development that we've set up. And we purposely did that at the beginning of the year because we anticipated that teachers would want to talk through that.
So are we going to step up actual formal evaluation?
No, we have a well-defined formal and informal evaluation process that we would use for measuring how teachers are doing things regardless of the schedule.
Right.
Right, so that's how we know it, but you can see from Arwen and Courtney's presentation today, one of the things that's definitely a strategic plan goal, a board goal, is something that is Courtney and Arwen's goals, is increased student voice and feedback, which you've already seen demonstrated this evening. You've heard it from our students here. So that is our most likely way that we would hear something from a student that they were uncomfortable with something. One of the things that the three of us have spent a lot of time hanging out in the Commons during lunches, during resources, visiting with students, listening to their feedback. That's where we're going to hear if there's a concern from a student, about an ongoing concern about what's happening in a classroom. Or through a parent report or a kid report like we always do if things are not going as expected in a classroom.
We've got, the best teachers here. So I know that they're doing their best to embrace what we're doing, and I share what you just shared. Just thinking about what you shared, I shared with somebody else recently. I mean, I've been an architect for a long time. If someone came to me and said, okay, you need to start doing it this way now instead.
Well, and pacing is not surprising. With a new teacher, that's always like the top thing that we need to work with our new teachers. Well, in some ways, our old teachers are new again within the new schedule, right? So it's the most difficult thing to do is to get your pacing right for a class period of how long will something actually take with this group of students? And, you know, I subbed the other day for an access class, and so I was ready for the lesson plan and everything else, and there was a part of it where I'm like, oh, this is going to be the spot where the kids really want to have a discussion. And I brought it up, I'm like, let's go, and everybody just looked at me. Right? So I was off by like 5 minutes of like I ended my lesson 5 minutes early because I had allocated 5 minutes for this great discussion that nobody wanted to have. So, I mean, those are the things that we all as teachers learn to navigate through, and the more we do it, and the next year when we come back and do it again, we'll just keep getting better at it.
I've been really impressed with the reflectiveness of our teachers. So the two buildings are structuring the PD the same way. And so there's time for teachers to talk in groups and talk out loud. And Hank and I were actually at one of them together where teachers were just talking about, just had time to reflect about what's working and what's not. And just like our students are saying, gosh, it's so nice. Like on Tuesday night, I only have to think about my classes for Wednesday. There were a couple of teachers that were like, okay, is anyone else also really liking the way this feels? And it does just gives more time to be reflective and deliberate in the change. And just a really nice thing about doing something new altogether is it gives everyone a chance to just really kind of lean in authentically and saying, okay, I'm confused. How are you working on this? How are you working on this? Because it's new to every student, every teacher, every administrator. We're all learning it together. And so just really building that like culture of trust and reflective dialogue. I've been really impressed with teachers sharing some things that they've struggled with, and then other teachers jumping right in to say, oh, I was having a hard time with that too, but you know, here's some things I built in and here's how I've helped make it better.
And something you always say is giving everyone grace to kind of learn through that, I think has been really, it's been helpful to see the teachers help each other work through that, and our instructional coaches to lead that work has been really positive.
That's excellent.
Since you brought up subs, is that a struggle if there's the last minute?
It hasn't been so far. We have, but, we have everybody on deck, including the district office. I think, I think Gina's subbed, Rob is subbed.
No, I just mean like, is it harder if a sub is coming in with very little notice? Is it harder for a sub on a block day to, what, are the students going to lose time because someone doesn't have 78?
The good news is, like, when a teacher's out, they're still responsible for planning the instructional activities for that day. And our whether it's a 50-minute period or a block day, our teachers tend to plan activities. And a lot of times, not a lot of times, but there are many times where a teacher knows it's coming, that they're going to be out for a reason. They set up activities intentionally for that. And when they're not, they do a nice job of getting a lesson plan in. And it's not like a teacher just is like, I'm not coming to work today, and then nothing happens after that. There's sub-plans that come in, and, we have department chairs that help make sure that our subs are set up and ready to go. And so I haven't heard issues with that. Obviously, subs are at a premium right now. But then, like I said, on access days, a lot of the administrators are subbing for those because they're very specific lessons that it would be hard for a sub to step in and run, like the one I stepped in on was about goal planning and scheduling, and those, it'd be hard for a sub to come in and do that. It's hard for me to come in and do that as a sub, so.
Well, I was thinking about this a little bit over the weekend, we've asked a lot of our teachers, and our students, and our staff, these last few years. And, this is, the fact that this is going well is a real testament to the quality people we have here. So,
well, this is
I'm thankful because I really believe in what we've done here.
And this is just the start. As we've talked to other schools that have made this change, the first month is really just figuring out the mechanics, right? That's, getting through the shift, learning how to plan, learning how to allocate your time, and those kinds of things. Other school districts we've talked to, it's like the next 8 weeks is when it starts to really get exciting, because now it's like, I know how it works. Now we start to create and build and really take off from this point. People are starting to see the benefits of it. Kids are starting to see the benefits of it. And now it'll be really, moving forward, get real exciting.
Yeah, I don't want anybody to infer that I was suggesting that
No.
we didn't have good teachers.
Oh, I hope they didn't.
I just know that
I know
everything
you're
I've
better than
read
that,
is
yeah.
where this has failed, it's been because
Yeah.
it is hard to change. It is hard, especially if you've got your way of doing things over years, and that's where, when this has failed, it has failed.
But at the same time, it's one class period a week. We didn't do a full block change.
Yeah.
A lot of schools do that full block change, and now it really is, it's not just one lesson a week that you have to plan different, it's every lesson every week. And students get you see this rotates through once a week with this chunk of time for some of our students. If this was 2 or 3 days a week with that, that's where these schedules get challenging, but 1 day a week for each class, it's an adjustment for that time, obviously, but it is really just one class period each week.
True. Thank you.
Well, thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you. Nice presentation.
All right. The next one here talks about state accountability measures. We've heard as the strategic plan rolled forward that there was at least some community members confused that believed that our strategic plan didn't speak enough about academic measures. If you take a look at our strategic plan and go in and look at those tasks, that's what that QR code will take you to. You will see that what our mission talks about is providing that foundation for students to pursue the future of their choosing, and it talks about what will create as students that are equipped to realize their potential. Realizing their potential is working at the highest level of their ability. You'll see today that the tasks that connect back to the state metrics reach into all 4 areas of the strategic directions within our strategic plan. There are quite a few of the strategic expectations that tie back. I think I have a whole chunk of them throughout here. And many of the tasks that we're challenged to do as administrators and teachers throughout this year tie back to that strategic plan. And you can see one we've talked a lot about here is, understanding how to leverage their instructional time to be successful. And, college and career readiness indicators we'll talk a little bit about today, and preparing for their next path outside of high school. So, I'm going to really leave it to Gina to lead through a lot of this, and I will be the color commentary, much to her chagrin. So go ahead, Gina.
Okay, so the school report card comes out every year in October. This year it will come out on the 27th, and it's always a year in the rear. So the data that's being reported will be for last year. The nice thing about the school report card also is that you can go in and look at multiple years. So there's an interactive nature of it, where you can go in and look at just not last year's data, but multiple years of data. And I'm sorry.
And this is the most accurate data that somebody can get. Like if you're going to one of those other websites online, many of them are 4, 5, or 6 years old. Their data is that far back. So this is going to be the most accurate, up-to-date data you can get. Sorry.
So we direct people to the Illinois State Report Card. So as we talk about ESSA, and I know I did a series of presentations a couple years ago where we looked at it in pieces. I want to refer back to the academic indicators and student success indicators in terms of how our designation will be determined. So as you can see, as a high school, 50% of it is based on graduation rates. And they look at the 4-year, the 5-year, and the 6-year cohorts. And by that, I mean a student who comes in, for example, in 2019 as a freshman, 4 years when they should graduate. Or for those remaining students who don't graduate in that cohort, how many of them graduate the following year and then the next year. So they're looking at the 4, 5, and 6-year cohorts. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in just a few minutes. But also want to draw attention to some of the other indicators that we've really focused on in District 99, like 9th grade on track, which you heard a little bit about earlier as well. But that's an area that we've really focused on, and as well as we're working on absenteeism. All of these are important factors, but we have focused on many of them. Some are new. For example, English learner progress to proficiency is a newer indicator, one that we have not necessarily been evaluated on before. And then, of course, the fine arts indicator is still yet to come.
I will point out, once again, we've highlighted in yellow, graduation rate is the #1 metric that our school district is measured by under this accountability factor. Yes, SAT, standardized tests play in, science proficiency plays in a separate test outside of the SAT. But you can see that is, those by no measure are the #1 determining factors. It's, are we completing the goal of graduation for our students here? And then are we providing the experiences for them so that they can be successful post-secondary? What ESSA really looks at, it's research-based, and it looks at the things that we know from research indicate that somebody will be successful after high school. So that, you're going to see that a lot in the college and career readiness standards. That's the second one from the bottom when we dig into that. But one thing we do know is that those standardized test scores have very little predictability on post-secondary success or even collegiate success. Things like GPA, were you involved in activities in athletics at school? Those kinds of things have a far greater predictability factor than things like standardized test scores, which are, one day, one time in a student's 4-year experience.
Yeah, this is really welcome, too, I think. This is the way things should be looked at. And how many years did we hear complaints from people about, just in general, teaching to the test, that sort of thing, right? And and luckily those days are behind us. Unfortunately, I think that there's still your great schools and other rating systems that look heavily at SAT and that
Those
sort
are
of things.
changing too.
Yeah,
but-
right.
Yeah, yeah,
But-
but they're slower to catch up.
But this is how we measure.
This is how we are measured at a state level. Yep.
So graduation rates, as I mentioned, calculated in 4-, 5-, and 6-year cohorts. So for example, students who came to us in 2019 would be looking at that 5-year graduation rate. It's those students who didn't graduate in 4 years that make up that group, and then the 6-year as well. So it's looked at in cohorts. Any student that remains, that means any student that remains, I know I've brought into this to the board before, that remains for T99, for example, that have an IEP, as that we learned earlier, they basically hurt that cohort rate. Because while they fulfill the graduation requirements for us to go to T99, we can't mark them as graduated because they're still our students. And so they factor into that 4-year rate. Now, they may help us at the 5th or 6th year, but definitely in terms of the 4-year, and more than likely it would be more towards the 6th or 7th year.
Yeah. And one of the
That
things, sorry, Gina. One of the things I'm working on this year with LEND is legislation to correct that mathematical
Good, thank you.
anomaly. We've had many school districts that have been working on this. Hinsdale's been a leader in this area, trying to get this fixed for many years. Tammy Prentice over there, a group of us joined in with her last year to try to get this changed. And this is now part of the policy committee for LEND that I'm chairing. This is one of the top priorities this year, to get that calculation corrected. Across Illinois, our graduation rates are deflated because of how that math is done in Illinois. We would immediately raise everybody's graduation rates across the state if we fixed that calculation mistake.
Well, it should.
They should, yes.
Because those students, are learning far more at T99,
And they're learning at their individual pace.
Yeah.
And districts like ours that have a very strong transition program
Right.
are more
Are
strongly
penalized.
penalized in that calculation.
We're- yeah.
So are you saying within the 50%, they're dividing that into 3, 4-year, 5-year, 6-year, and then, okay.
Yes.
They look at all 3. It's it's not just T99 students, just so you know.
Mhm.
It can also be EL students, so English learners. Some come to us with gaps in their education, and so it's in their best interest to remain and to meet our graduation requirements, but then that also does impact us. Last year, we were really excited because we saw a substantial decrease in the failure rate. We were very strategic, more so than ever in terms of communication and how we approach students that are at risk of failing. And
Last year, you heard from Ryan and Georgia that came in and talked about those strategic responses to failures and the difference that they were making. So it's important to look at between first and second semester last year because nothing else changed, right? All the changes in grading practices we made and all of that were the same across that entire school year. And what you saw is our communication strategies for intervention got better as the year went on. We definitely decreased the failure rate.
And one of the things that we didn't talk about in terms of access today is that we have time built-in access for students, and we haven't started yet, but for students to get support from teachers called Student Support with Pass, and also student autonomy days where they can also go to teachers and get help. We purposely waited to get some of our very important lessons into the beginning of the school year, and then by class, or year in school, I should say, different groups will be able to go and get help. And as you know, our students have, our teachers, have office hours where students can also get help, and during their resource time. So we have academic supports throughout the building that students can take advantage during, for some of those students, during that gap. Ninth grade on track, we have talked about several times, and this basically means that a student has earned 5 credits. They cannot fail more than 1 semester in a core content area, so English, math, social studies, or science. This is absolutely research-based. The research shows that if students meet this criteria, they are more likely to graduate in 4 years, substantially more likely to graduate in 4 years. And again, that's 50% of our designation. One of the things that actually was said earlier is that sometimes students struggle with the transition to high school.
Yeah.
It's new, it's different. And so that's an area that I think the activities that we heard about, I know South as well has various activities and leaders for students coming in, both transfer and our 9th graders, really help those students with the transition. We did see a decrease in our freshman on track numbers, our 9th grade on track in 2021, but we recovered that quickly the following year. While our data is not out yet, we are very excited because our preliminary numbers, our projected number looks at like it's 96.1%, which with the exception of the 1920 year, when we know that there were restrictions on grades and whatnot, is the highest year before that. So typically, as a district, we were somewhere between like 93.2 and about 94.6. That was kind of our range. We had that one year where it was substantially higher, almost 98%, 97.7%.
Remember, that was the year
So-
where we couldn't assign Fs.
Right.
Weren't allowed to.
So if we exclude that year, this is a record year.
And that goes back to those interventions from last year, making sure we intervene early and communicate strongly.
And I do believe that the lessons we're doing in Access, our executive functioning lessons, will help, particularly our freshman students, but all students as well. Really focused and deliberate and strategic about it. And as Dr. Thiele said, we are continuing the same strategic approach that we have been doing since last year. Standardized testing. One of the things with standardized testing that makes it very difficult is that oftentimes people want to compare SAT scores. So last year's SAT scores to this year's, or 2 years ago, or
Not the
whatnot.
same students.
But really, it's a different group of students. It's a different cohort. Just like for graduation rates, I talked about cohorts of students, it's a different group. It really should be more about the growth of that cohort. And unfortunately, due to the pandemic and whatnot, there was a hiatus. There was a time period where we were not giving, the state was not giving the PSAT 8, 9, and 10.
So really, the way this should be working is you compare that same group. Like, it wouldn't be appropriate to have that side of the table go run a race outside, and then this side of the table go run a race outside, and say, like, how did that group do in comparison to this group? What's a better comparison is you run your race, and then we work on training with you, and then we see the next time you run the race, how much did you improve? And then we do the same thing with the folks on this side of the table. It is a educational research absolute no-no to compare a group of students in one
apples and
cohort
oranges.
to another cohort. You compare them to themselves over time and look if they're making growth. As Gina said, we just haven't been able to do that in this new SAT suite yet.
Now, are they doing that this year?
Yes, and they
So
did
that-
last
so
year,
that
and
we
I
can
thought
now-
It's just the class
Just
of
that one.
2023.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And 2024. It won't be in the class of 2025 that we have the full longitudinal set of data.
Yeah. And that's what people should compare.
Right.
Yes, it's just
Yeah.
the data's
They just
lacking
don't.
at this point, yes.
So our scores typically are above the state average. I do believe that the support that students will get during access and some of the lessons related specifically to executive function will help students as they grow in the suite of assessments.
And now we also have time during resource, once those scores come in, to set aside time to explain what they mean, how to use Khan Academy and other resources to improve their scores.
Excellent point.
You know, where we can get that to every student, where before that was difficult to do.
That's right.
Or it was hit or miss. It was done a little here, a little here, a little here, but now more uniform.
And then me at home saying, come on. You can.
Yeah.
'Cause
Sign
that's-
up again.
That's right, scholarships.
So English learners' progress to proficiency. This is something that is new and that we are learning about. In fact, the first part says that the state's going to track for 5 years. They actually, I was just in a webinar this week, in fact, where they said due to the pandemic and whatnot, they're going to give us 1 year kind of grace period. So it'll actually be 6 years for this first cohort. But basically, it's tracking how students are doing with the goal of students exiting EL services within 5 years. And the way students exit is through a test called the access test. So it's looking at those test scores to see how students do and looking at growth from year to year for each student. Our EL population is growing. And in fact, the majority of our students that are in our EL program, they come to us from another school where they were in an EL program. It's not necessarily they're newcomers. They're not necessarily coming from another country to us. Many of them were born in this country, but have never exited.
The great majority.
The great majority never exited via the access test. Though they're taking it every year, taking the access test every year, but they haven't achieved the required score, which is set by the state, to exit the EL program. So that's a challenge for us. It also tends to be a very mobile group, and and the nature of our EL population can change quickly. We can get a couple of families come in, and we might have a whole other language that we didn't have any students. We had some students just come in that speak Congolese, right? So we've had groups before that have, but it's changed. We've had some students come in this year from the Ukraine, so more than we typically have. We are still now have students, what we call coming across the counter, which means enrolling in our school. Some perhaps have been at other schools, many of them have not been in school so far this year. So that's a challenge for us. It tends to be a very mobile group. We have increased our professional development for all teachers on English learners, how to work with English learners, strategies to use with English learners, sound teaching practices to use with English learners. We did that the first time was last year, the very end of last year, and then on Institute Day this year, we did a whole hour and a half, I believe it was, on EL and EL strategies, where teachers actually went back into their departments to also discuss it from their specific content area. So we have seen an increase, and we've seen an increase in classes.
And then access, what have we done?
So we have, in some cases, separate sections of access for EL or bilingual students. Bilingual students, just so you know, means students that are in our bilingual program. Both schools have a bilingual program that is for Spanish-speaking students. If you have 20 students of one language, you're required to have a bilingual program. So while many of the students are bilingual, what we mean here by bilingual means specifically Spanish-speaking students who are in our bilingual programming.
Okay.
Okay? So we have separate access for them. Absenteeism is also something we have been working on and are really focused on. Chronic absenteeism from the state level basically means that if a student misses 10% of the school year, they are considered a chronically absent. They're a chronic issue, which if you think about it, is about 17 days. If the student is with us for the entire year, it does change if it's a transfer student and whatnot, but for the average student, it's about 17 days. It doesn't necessarily mean 17 full days because students could have several period absences, and then when you combine them, it can come to 17 or more days. And this is for any reason. This could be illness. This could be orthodontist appointments. This could be cutting class. I mean, there's any multitude, excused, unexcused. It's all combined. So when a student is out for any reason, it can impact it.
And as the board knows, we look very closely at our equity numbers at different groups of students to understand is anybody more or less disproportionately affected by any of these things. One of the things that we know overall is that students that are with free or reduced lunch are a group that's far more likely, greatly disproportionate to be chronically absent. So, you know, this year we're really focusing on, you know, continuing to support those. That's part of the tasks and goals for the board. But it also, students of color are disproportionately represented in this, in the group of chronic absenteeism as well. So groups that we definitely need to look out for and support through
Are we worried about those kids in the block schedule that have the long thing of being bored and they just want to leave?
Yeah, I think that there could be a problem with that, you know, and we'll continue to measure it. But we also know that we have a lot of students that end up overwhelmed and stressed that take days off of school, probably more often because of that. We actually believe that the block schedule will help with some of that because there's time built in during the day to get help.
And they
to
can
catch
see
up
a teacher.
Yeah, to see a teacher or see a counselor. Like, we're building in the time in this new schedule for those kind of supports to be there. So we're hoping that that helps with some of this.
And we're reaching out to those students because some of them
Absolutely.
might be a little, maybe ashamed of their
Yeah, oh, absolutely.
situation, and so they don't want to
Yep.
go. So hopefully we're making those contacts.
Yes, we are.
And I'm hopeful that the resource time that we've heard about, not just those students who might have that double, right? Could be opportunities for students who do need to go to the doctor or do need to go to the orthodontist to take advantage of some of that time that's already built in that will not adversely impact their attendance rate.
Oh, okay, so that
Yeah,
doesn't.
so take that resource period and go to the orthodontist during that time, miss that chunk of time and not your math class, right? Because that attendance during resource
So
doesn't
that's not
hurt
going
us.
to count
Right.
for
Right,
that.
that doesn't count against us then.
Okay, all
So
right. Yeah.
creating some time where parents can, we know doctor's offices are only open at certain time or, you know, those kinds of things. Now, take that resource period and schedule the doctor's appointment for that time rather than during a regular instructional class period.
Okay, good, all right.
We'll have to, that's something too, to educate the
promote.
parents
Yep,
and promote about
absolutely.
that. And we were just talking here too, on a side, because I remember, I used to get every now and then unexcused absence notifications, and it's in Mary or Wes, or I was there. Have we fixed some of that?
I think so, because they don't track as much, like at study hall, you don't have to go check in at the
Right.
library or check in
And
at
a lot of
the-
those were
Yeah, that's what, in my experience.
study hall. Yeah.
Okay.
Now they're checking in at the coffee bar.
At the coffee bar. Now I, yes, now I can see it, now I see it in a different way.
Is there a list there?
No, you just know that you have to
Well-
add funds.
Just, you know, the more accurate we can be about what's actually going on, that'll benefits us as well.
Absolutely.
Right? So,
Yeah.
Climate survey is given annually. It's called the 5 Essentials. We are required to have certain response rates in order to get our data, so to get the data. It's a very general survey, and it's not customizable. We can't add our own questions, for example, or we can't tweak the questions. Sometimes we struggle as a high school because some of the questions seem to be more tailored to an elementary model. But our students are great about it. We scheduled that time into Access. We used to take instructional time for that. So in other words, it would be done in class, but during one of their classes, not during Access. So this year, students will take the 5 Essentials during Access. And that you've probably taken it, or you've certainly got the emails. We need to have a parent response of 20% in order to get results as well. Teachers also take it. The Fine Arts Indicator, we have several years until this will go into effect. It's basically 2 areas. So it's student participation, so the percent of students that are taking fine arts classes. So music, visual arts, those kinds of classes. And the second part of that is teacher qualifications. So the percent of students enrolled in a fine arts class that is taught by a teacher who has a fine arts endorsement. So this is an area where we excel. All of our teachers are endorsed in what they teach. So if they're teaching art, they're endorsed in art. If they're teaching music, they're endorsed in, if they're teaching social study, I mean, it's the same regardless. So teacher qualifications will certainly not be an issue. One of the things that I think will help us as well is we have a half-credit fine arts requirement. So our students have to at least earn half a credit in fine arts. Many earn more than that. You know, for example, we average about 14 unique students taking just visual art classes, drawing, painting, ceramics, whatnot, in any given year. So this is something where I think our students really excel. And I only mentioned visual arts, but in our band and music program as well, we average around 918 students, unique students. And that's performance classes and non-performance classes as well. So while this is coming, I think this is an area that we will
excel.
Yeah, we were ahead of the curve here with that requirement. So you'll see many other school districts start adding that kind of a requirement to boost this number up. We're already there. And we already have the staff to support. All right.
We just don't want them poaching our staff.
One of the things that we haven't spent a lot of time digging into with the board or even our staff, and we did this to open the school year, is the one that's highlighted there in that teal color, which is college and career readiness standards. This makes up a good chunk of our overall score at 6.25%. It's a rather, so like how all of these things combine together to give us a score, there's a whole bunch of factors under college and career readiness that combine together to give us that score. Improving that, tracking it, measuring it is all a whole new job in itself, and that's part of the reason we brought Ryan on board here at the district office to help us in this category here.
So college and career ready, for a student to be considered college and career ready, they have to have a GPA of 2.8 or higher. They have to have 95% average attendance their last 2 years, so grades 11 and 12. And they have to have the third main bullet there, which is where it becomes a little bit challenging in terms of record keeping, in terms of students meeting the requirements. Excuse me. One way is students earning the college and career pathway endorsement. So if they earn that, they don't have to worry about where it says or all of the following, right? So if they earn that, they're good. As you may already know, District 99 is a leader in this area. We had 16 students, which does not sound like a lot, but I believe we had
The most in the state.
most of any district
Yeah,
in
and the
the
majority
state.
of them in the state, yes.
Who earned it last year. And that is something that we are working on, and students can earn it in one of 4 areas. The majority of our students are earning it in education because we have a clear and very well-defined pathway, but that's one way that students can meet that third bullet. Or they can meet it through the following. So they have to have an academic indicator in both English language arts and in math, which could be an AP score, it could be an ACT score, it could be an SAT score. It could be a dual credit course, a number of different ways they can meet that. They need to identify a career interest by the end of 10th grade, which all of our students do. They do it through our counseling lessons. They also do a survey in Naviance, which is a program that we use to assess their interests as well. And then, as you can see, there's a series of other indicators. Many of them relate to things like internships or work experience, co-curricular activities, community service, summer employment, just a host of different indicators, and they have to earn 3 of those. And so that can be very challenging, especially for our students who are involved in a lot. They might be involved in athletics and clubs and have the co-curricular activities, but they still have to have 2 of the others as well. So one of the things that we think will help our students with the GPA and certainly with the common experience work is that we have really established consistent grading practices now. And that's something that we've been working on for several years now, where grades actually reflect the progress towards mastery of our students, basically what our students have learned in terms of meeting standards. And it's consistent with achievement. I believe that the access lessons, which I believe Dr. Thiele mentioned earlier about goal setting, will really help as well, as students are going to be hopefully more aware of their goals, setting their goals, reflecting on their goals. Have you met the goal? Where are you at with that? As well as the executive functioning lessons that we talked about. Certainly the consistency of the new schedule and the later start time. There's research that shows, and we heard that some students are really excited about being able to sleep an extra 20 minutes. Certainly is good for our students. And then opportunities for students to get help, both during those student support with past days and access and student autonomy days, also during office hours, during lunch, especially on the block day when they have that resource period. So just a lot of different opportunities for students to get extra help. The career interest I mentioned, they basically accomplish that through our counselor lesson, and it starts freshman year. So that was only by sophomore year. We are in great shape because we're starting that from the beginning. Really, we are starting to increase our focus on pathways, and I think that shows with the endorsements that we just talked about. Our counseling curriculum includes a lot. I just listed a few things here. So 4-year planning, career exploration, investigation. They take all kinds of different career interest surveys online that helps in that area. Exploring post-secondary options, and as required now. And certainly we did a lot of this even before it was required, helping students to complete and work on the FAFSA. And helping families as well to understand the importance of that and how to go about doing that. These lessons now, the counseling lessons, are now delivered through Access. Whereas before, they would push into academic classes, so push into English, push into social studies, for different years of school, freshmen, sophomore, junior, seniors, and it's all 4 years, the counseling curriculum. So now those lessons are delivered in Access over a couple of days. It's a shorter period of time. And therefore, we're protecting class time. So we're not taking time away from the different areas for these lessons to occur. And as we heard earlier, some of the presentations that are going to be done in resource, upcoming in resource, are related to college and career experiences. So that will be certainly a nice blend to those access lessons. Capstone courses. Capstone courses can be defined a number of different ways. They're basically the highest level in a sequence. Oftentimes it might be a dual credit or an advanced placement course or an honors course. One of the challenges here is that we provide students with an array of experiences, which is good because they can kind of test the waters and see what they're interested in. They may not get to a capstone course if they're experimenting with what they're interested in, or students who are clearly interested and know what their passion is might excel and go through the entire pathway. It really depends on the student and the situation. Sometimes scheduling students into capstone courses can be difficult. Oftentimes they could be what we call singleton or doubleton courses. So there are courses where we might only have a couple of sections. And so there's only 8 periods in the day. So getting those to all come together can be challenging, but our buildings do a great job with that, and they work very hard to try and reduce what we would call conflict, where one class is conflicting with another. We are increasing our dual credit offerings to provide greater opportunities for students. I'm very excited about that. And our capstone course enrollment's up by about 4% from last year. So we are seeing an increase. I think that is coinciding with, of course, increase in dual credit in some cases, but we are seeing an increase in students going through the entire pathway and taking capstone courses.
I'm going to use this slide as an opportunity to show how everything stacks on top of one another, right? As students come in and we do all of this support for 9th graders coming in, whether it's the students like you heard today, access, resource, supports that way, office hours that we've added, the interventions to make sure kids are getting to school, being successful when they are being successful when they're there, intervening when they're not. Starting from freshman year helps us with that 9th grade on track data. The more students are successful earlier in their career, the more slots in their schedule are open later in their career because they're not repeating or retaking courses, whether to get a higher grade or a passing grade. Like, these all impact one another. A student that's not taking a study hall, so they're dabbling in another subject area, might then open up a pursuit for a capstone course or a dual credit course later. You can't separate all of this stuff we've talked about today with the strategic plan, the schedule, the interventions, the supports. They all feather together to go into like these kinds of opportunities that then play out for how we are ranked as a school district coming out. So it's all of the work combined that really work together to create these kinds of opportunities.
Advanced placement enrollment has been steady. It has been steady for several years. We have seen some changes from the College Board in AP testing and when students have to sign up for the AP test. And I think that has impacted us as well. Students have to sign up before they really know if they think they'll do well on the test, which is really challenging for students. We have seen more situations where colleges will not accept AP scores. Depends on the major, depends on the school. There's all kinds of factors. Or where they may only accept a 4 or a 5, or they may only accept it for elective credit. So there's all kinds of challenges with AP. Still, our AP enrollment is up, and so from last year, so about 7%. So our students have navigated through all of that and are still taking AP classes. One of the interesting things, which I know I didn't put on the slide, but one of the interesting things that we have done, and we're starting to do more of, is to look at our AP classes and try to get dual credit for them as well. So a student would take it, still could take the AP test, absolutely, but could also earn dual credit. Dual credit, much more likely to be able to transfer that credit as opposed to worrying about that one day, one score of the AP test.
Right.
So we're trying to marry some of those as well.
How are we affected by whether or not a student chooses to pay for and take the AP test or not?
So a lot of these various sites do look at your AP scores, and depending on the number of students that take them. We look at not just AP scores, and I do look at the AP scores, but we look at enrollment more so than anything, because the more rigorous courses that students can take, the better they will be, the better they'll be prepared.
That's what I
for the next.
I was thinking, yeah. So I wanted kind of emphasis on that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Oh, students are far better served by taking that AP course and stretching themselves than not taking one at all.
Absolutely.
100%.
Which is part of the reason why the board eliminated several years ago the penalty for getting a D in an AP course and not that being an accelerated course for you then. Because we have several students that, like, they're really stretching to be enrolled in that curriculum. And they're going to be far better served. You know, they might have been a BC student in other courses. Being a CD student in an AP course is far better than something without that same level of rigor.
It shows that initiative too.
Yep.
And we hear time and time again that universities look at the caliber of the courses that students take. So that is helping.
We still have some growth in this area. Obviously, students of color are disproportionately underrepresented in our AP courses. So continuing to make, to make this more accessible. Well, you'd think that though, providing more support throughout the day, right, where students can get help when they need it and not have to try to seek that out before or after school, definitely will help make these courses more attractive to our students and make our students more successful in them when they take them.
It benefits the students to challenge themselves, even our, our college-bound students. I mean, the colleges that I've had interactions with, I mean, they look at what classes were offered by the school and whether or not you chose to take them or not. You're better off getting that B or C in an AP class than you are getting an A in a class that was a little easier for you and you didn't challenge yourself. And so it's sometimes having a little lower GPA is actually beneficial, even for a scholarship.
Well, that's why they get that boost when they take those AP courses.
Yeah. And take the test.
So dual credit, I spoke a little bit about already, but dual credit is transcripted college credit. In most cases, it will transfer. Sometimes it'll transfer as an elective. It really depends on your program and the school, but it is transcripted college credit based on the work you've done over the course of the semester or the school year and not on one-day test. So that is why we're working to try and braid both the AP courses as well with dual credit. We have about 10% of our students enrolled in a dual credit course. We have increased the number of dual credit courses the last few years, and we're very proud of that. It is a challenge, and it's a challenge because there's very strict qualifications, requirements that teachers must have to teach a dual credit course. And I listed them there. So they have to have a master's degree in the content area. They could have a master's degree in any area, so education would be fine, and 18 graduate credits in the specific content area. Or they could have a master's in any area, 9 hours graduate level coursework, and they can enter into a professional development plan with COD. We are required to work with our local community college, where they would get the remaining required hours within 3 years. And we actually just entered, a week or two ago, our first teacher entered into a PDP with COD, so very exciting about that. And one of the ways, and this is actually helping in that situation, but with many teachers, as you know, part of our last contract was about tuition assistance, and dual credit is an area of high need, and we have awarded tuition assistance for teachers to go back and get those hours in the specific content area.
That's awesome. Gene, I almost feel like that slide's part of your capstone project for your career here.
Yeah, she's been hard at work at that for a long time, yes.
It's really beneficial.
Yeah.
So, well done.
Go.
So co-curriculars, we have seen a slight increase from last year. We are really want to focus some attention to our free reduced lunch students because they are 3.5 times less likely to be involved in 2 or more. And remember when we went through those indicators, it was 2 or more co-curriculars. You heard one of our principals, I forgot which one, talk about the activity athletic fair that we just had this week in Resource. And so really trying to get students involved. I think the new schedule also provides time in the morning for more clubs to meet in the morning. So if students are involved in, for example, athletics after school, but there's a club they want to participate, if the club's meeting in the morning, it provides a little bit greater flexibility for our students. And then, of course, students who may have in the past had a lot of homework and maybe didn't participate, there's times during the day built into the schedule where they can get help if they need it, or they can work on their studies. So the equity journey continuum is new.
I'm going to pause,
Oh.
transition here. So everything we talked about right now is about our overall state score, right? And those are all the metrics and everything that goes into that. Now there's another set of metrics that runs parallel to this, which is what Gina's going to talk about.
Yep, and does not impact our designation, that, what we've been talking about in terms of those different ratings. So this is new, this is the first time it will appear on our school report card. And it basically looks at several different areas like student learning, as you can see at the bottom there, learning conditions and elevating educators. And I'll just give you a couple examples. So like in student learning, it looks at, for example, SAT, for high schools. It looks at SAT, looks at our graduation rate, which as we know is 50% already of our designation. And it looks at EL progress to proficiency, which I mentioned earlier. So those are just a few examples. In terms of learning conditions, it looks at like the climate survey, so the 5 essential survey that I mentioned before. It also looks at suspensions and expulsions. So those are some areas that fall into learning conditions. And then for elevating educators, it looks at the credentials of our teachers. Are they qualified to teach the courses that they teach? So are they out of their assigned area or not? And as I mentioned earlier, our teachers are endorsed in the courses or the content areas that they teach, so we're in great shape there. It does look at the demographics of our teachers in comparison to the demographics of our students as well, and also looks at teacher evaluation. And looking at those 3 larger areas, student learning, learning conditions, elevating educators, it gives us ratings, basically the 1 through 4 that you see up there. Are there large gaps, which is something that they're basically saying we would need to work on? Are there moderate, small, or minimal gaps? And so the score will tell us where those gaps are.
So these will be released, I think, October as well, is that right?
Yeah, October 27th.
As well, it'll be part of the school report card.
Now,
So-
will this affect the report card in any way?
It'll
Or is
be
this a separate number?
It's a separate number, although many of the variables overlap, right? So if you're making improvements in these scores, you're going to be making improvements in your overall scores. I'll also point out, many of the tools that we mentioned earlier that people in the community are using, like these websites online, like greatschools.org, are factoring these equity variables into the scores they're assigning schools. So the deficits that we have that we mentioned earlier today, where we have disproportionate numbers, not only will impact us in our overall scores, will impact us on the equity continuum, but these independent websites that are giving schools scores, discrepancies, disproportionalities in data, negatively impact our scores there as well. So, you know, the equity work that we do here is essential in so many ways, from the individual student all the way up to our metrics that we're rated on, to these third-party metrics that people in the community use. Equity is integral in improving those scores in so many different ways. So this isn't something that you don't do. These are the things that you do because it's the right thing to do for kids,
Right.
but it's also reflected in the scores that we are evaluated by in so many different ways.
So basically, on all 3 of those, you would like to see it to be 4s?
Right, well, yeah, you want to be as high as possible, yeah.
I mean, is that the highest number we can
Yes.
get?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yep.
all right.
So, are we going to, are there going to be things that we're going to have to do as a result of receiving a certain score?
Not yet.
But we're foreseeing that? 'Cause
It's
that's kinda how
possible.
it's
I
worked
would
in the
think that's how,
past.
right now, it's like, we're just reporting it, and then
Right.
eventually, I'm sure,
Because
we'll
you
have a
report
plan.
it
And in
first.
some of these, like our disproportionate discipline data that we already have, right, where we are suspending students of color disproportionately higher than our white students, we already have a plan, right, in the measures that we're taking to try to close those gaps. So, that's one segment of this score, but we know that there are other areas that are already out there that the state requires us to respond to, and we are. But I would imagine over time, you know, as this gets unpacked and out there, that'll demonstrate some areas where we need to dedicate some resources to growing in. Yeah. So this will come later. They're finalizing the data on this. This will come with the school report card. Gina will be coming back next month to start unpacking what some of our numbers are, both in the first half of the presentation on our overall scores, but then in the equity continuum as well. So this is kind of the preview of once we start giving you all of those scores, what they all meant, right? So we didn't have to explain what they all meant in one night and give you the scores.
This was our access period.
This was your access period, yes. It was a long access period. I will point out, once again, that the strategic plan that the board approved, so many different areas of that tie back into these state metrics, right? There's some that are very specific that tie into those metrics, and there are some that are the building blocks to improve those metrics. Overall, we talked about the mission and the vision. The next step of that is the district values. On opening day, we talked about this with our staff, about there's these 5 values, and these are really, teachers are talking about these a lot throughout their planning. Many of them have them posted in their classrooms, that these are the values that we strive to, but they really tie to what we know about teaching and learning. So everything that you heard today about metrics comes back to this, our values. We know that if we build caring and trusting environments, that we do that by showing that we understand kids, that we accept kids for who they are, that they don't have to change who they are for us, that students start to feel like they belong at school. When that happens, students have high self-esteem, high self-confidence. They're willing to take risks in classrooms, willing to take on some of these higher level courses because they know they belong here and that they'll be supported. When that happens, we see them accelerating into these higher levels. So the values that the board approved as part of the strategic plan are at the heart of making everything we talked about tonight improve, grow, and get better. This is what we're talking about with our teachers during professional development and all of those things. This all weaves together. It all stacks on top of one another. You can't separate any of this as one individual, like little score, and make any assumptions about what we do as a district. You need to look at this whole comprehensive approach to making sure that every kid gets exactly what they need to understand what we're doing here. So, any other questions for us? I know we answered a lot along the way, but. All
I
right.
can't wait to see what our score is.
Yeah.
Gotta stay tuned.
Yeah.
We have one final presentation for you this evening, and it has to do with the master facility plan and the final financial report associated to that. Just a couple of quick slides as we start to wrap up that project. Once again, it ties back to the strategic plan. One of the key pieces, you can see the task down at the bottom this year, obviously making a safe school environment, modernizing our environment, but we have a key task this year on T99. That's one of the tasks that the administration has been challenged with this year, the long-range plan for supporting the expected enrollment growth there. So to tell that story, we need to go all the way back to the master facility plan and where we started and where we ended. So I'll turn this over to Mark.
Well, it is a big challenge for us. You know, it's a big number. We're talking about $4.9 million total for the renovation and expansion of the T99 program. And we're going to ask you to approve a budget at the next board meeting. And we had to find a place to make this work. So we dug back into the master facility plan, and this 136.6 is the total amount of bonds issues, and the project cost that was originally scheduled. We came pretty close at 136,250 right now. There's still some outstanding obligations with that are POs that are out there. Some of it is being able to get, as I understand it, some components that just are slowing down and the whole lag that we've had nationally and internationally. But we have out of the master facility plan $264,000 not yet obligated. So if you go to the next.
I'm just going to take this opportunity that the board challenged the administration to deliver more than what was expected with the master facility plan. Mr. Davenport, come in under budget and on time.
Yeah.
We did all of those things as part of the master facility plan.
And this is something we try to not talk about the whole time to keep it up as like a safety net for us. we have interest earning, as we issue the bonds, we put them in the bank, wait for those bills to come, but they earn interest. And we earned about 1.5 million in interest. We haven't closed yet, but that much is already known. We've already moved $750,000 to T99 in the phase one buildup, where we had 2/3 of the building originally for the program, and there's a whole big back area that we renovated and brought together.
Yep.
So we're really going to what we're calling like a phase two now of the T99 build-up. But we have $783,000 still on hand, so we have little pockets of ability here. So if we go to the next, combine those two, the fund balance from the 136 million and the interest earnings, we have over $1 million that we can put forward to this program. And so that brings us to 49 is what we think the program comfortably with. It's like a little bit high. I think it is $50,000. And in my mind, I think the 49 is still going to be high. We're hoping it comes down to a lower number, but we're preparing for this because this is what the total will be. And $3.9 million we can take out of the working cash fund and use that. And that would be in my opinion, the best use of that working cash fund right now to get this program guaranteed. And then we can, we always still have other safety nets like debt service extension based that we could fall on if we have problems. But we'll still have significant balance in the working cash fund.
What will it be about?
3.9 take out of the.
No, what would the balance?
In the working cash,
Working
we'll have
cash.
about a 5% fund balance.
Okay,
Yeah, actually 6.1, I think it is.
okay.
So it's still be a good balance, a safe balance in there. And so that'll be something that we'll have in the the budget that we're going to put together have for you to approve at the next meeting. This will be part of it. And you'll see a transfer from the working cash fund, eventually getting to this project fund.
So I want to point out that between Mark Tree and Jim, they have managed to put together a plan here between the working cash fund, the master facility plan, interest, which was like found money through this, and the amount that was left over from the master facility plan, where we were able to deliver more under budget, to put this together in a way that we can also meet the needs of T99 without additionally increasing taxes for anybody in our community. Right, so at the end of all of this, we will have met the needs of both of our main attendance centers at North and South, but also, hugely expanding needs at T99.
Next slide, we can talk about
Will we be
promises made and promises kept with the.
Will we be putting that working cash, replenishing that? Will we be putting that back in out of?
We could do it. We have capacity to do that in terms of there's limits on how much you can have in working cash. So we could have a bigger one, but we'd have to go back out.
And ask for money?
Yeah.
I think didn't we issue 10 million?
Yeah, we have the capacity to issue much more if we needed to, yes.
Right, but I remember we issued the 10 million
Yeah, that's what we're
because
talking about.
of the pandemic and wanting to make sure that we we didn't get too tight because we didn't know what the future was going to hold.
Right.
All right.
So the last thing, and I think it's really I'm excited, this is what the original proposed budget structure really went out all the way to 2040, 4 more years. It's $8.9 million a year. And what we did in 2018 is we saw the interest rates dropping. And so we originally were going to do 4 bond issues. We did 3. We made that third one. We combined the third and the fourth together because interest rates were so low. We wanted to take advantage of them right away.
Yeah.
And lock those in, and so we did. So it's like getting a mortgage. It's a in this case, 20-year mortgage, but having it be paid off by 16 years. We're getting 4 years of relief to our taxpayers. Now, what's going to happen in 15, 20 years? You don't know, and there could be to the somebody will fill this, some other won't be me.
I don't think anybody around this table is going to be part of that.
Typically, it's hard to see you go down, but and there could be a whole nother series of master facility plan issues that we need to address. But anyways, this is what we have. And our deal was to make sure it's $65 for $300,000 of market value of home. We've kept that promise to the penny, so just real proud of that, and it's something we can tell our community. We were looking out for them, and we did the right thing.
And more.
Yes, yeah.
And more.
Yeah, and get more in terms of.
Yeah.
So and that's
we got the
huge too,
addition.
paying it all off 4 years earlier than what
Well,
was.
if you could get a mortgage and
Wow.
cut your
Right.
mortgage from 20 years to 16 years,
Mhm.
any family would feel like, wow, we did a really nice thing for ourselves here.
Yeah.
We were able to do that for our community in the way that Mark and Drury issued those bonds.
Yeah.
And
Thank
just
you.
we could have cut it a little bit all the way across the top and rescheduled things, but these were the bonds at the highest interest rate and the longest way out, so this was the right thing to do
Yes.
financially. And it gives us some capacity down there again if we ever have to go out.
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
Wow. Thank you.
Awesome.
Thank you. Thank you.
I don't know, I feel like we should be having a big, right?
Where's the ticker tape parade?
Exactly.
one thing I want to clarify, you
Wow.
mentioned that this site has to run a race. I don't have to run a race. do I?
You're our anchor.
You're the anchor.
Titanium, I don't think I can run it.
Oh, yeah.
Any questions
Yeah,
for Mark?
it'll be working while the rest of us are laying there.
Any questions for Mark or Hank?
No. Thank
Okay,
you.
so next time we'll come back with the full budget and the 5-year forecast, which this all plays into, right? But
Okay.
we wanted to pull this out separate and show how T99 would be funded without increasing, taxes for our residents in District 99.
Mhm.
So,
Very good. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Okay, we have no speakers?
no visitors.
No visitors.
Okay, now I need a motion from the board to go into closed session for the appointment, employment, compensation, discipline, performance, or dismissal of specific employees, specific individuals who serve as independent contractors in a park, recreational, or educational setting, or specific volunteers of the district or legal counsel of the district, including hearing testimony on a complaint lodged against an employee, a specific individual who serves as an independent contractor in a park, recreational, or educational setting, a volunteer of the district or against legal counsel for the district to determine its validity, and litigation when an action against, affecting, or on behalf of the district has been filed and is pending before a court or administrative tribunal, or when the district finds that an action is probable or imminent, in which case the basis for the finding shall be recorded and entered into the minutes of the closed meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Mike and Terry?
Thank you. Mike Davenport.
Aye.
Terry Pavasich.
Aye.
Joanna Vasquez Drexler.
Aye.
Christopher Espinoza.
Aye.
Sherelle Fuller.
Aye.
Jenny Hagstrom.
Aye.
And Nancy Kupka.
Aye. Thank you. We are going into closed session. We will not be taking any action other than to adjourn when we come out. So anybody who's not,
I would like to say something before we.
go right ahead.
I just want to say thank you to everyone who came to the block party on Saturday. And I want to thank the folks at North for hosting us, and the CMG staff did a fabulous job. So my kudos to them. And it was a great event, and the weatherman stayed with us the whole time. And I just want to say thank you. Thank you to all who came, and those who didn't missed a really fun day.
Good food.
About how many people came, Terry?
I don't know, maybe a couple hundred.
Steady all day.
Maybe 300. I don't know. We didn't really keep track of the number of people, but the food trucks, I think, were successful. I mean, I think everybody got something to eat, and they were happy, and the kids loved the games. The games were a big hit, and then the band was pretty good. So I think there was fun time for all, and I just wanted to say thank you, and I'm sure you'll hear more about things that are coming up, but North, you did a great job. Great job. And we all enjoyed the North-South game, so.
We did.
So.
We did.
Downers Grove won.
And it was a close game until close
Till
to
the end. Yeah, but no, it was really a fun game, and we'll see South playing homecoming this week, and then North following just the next week. So it'll be a good time in Downers Grove, and the weather hopefully will be fabulous. So that's my.
Closed session will be in here. Let's take a
Yes.
few minutes to
Few
clear
minute
the
break.
room over, a few minute break.